Testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. All right, we are live on Facebook for the Macon-Bibb County Committee meetings for April 28th. I am going to, Mr. Mayor, are you ready to get started?
Yes, I am ready.
All right. Give me just 1 second. I'll let you know when we're going. For anyone just tuning in, we are about to go live with the Macon-Bibb County Committee meetings for April 28th, 2020. We're getting our live capabilities up and running on our website. We'll be live momentarily.
You're ready. So I can start? Am I muted or am I unmuted? Live from 700 Poplar Street and numerous other locations throughout Macon-Bibb County, across the state of Georgia and the United States of America, courtesy of Zoom Productions. And thanks to our IT department and our public relations department, we are now live. Let me call to order these committee meetings with apologies for being about 28 minutes late getting started. And thank everyone for their patience as we weather through technical difficulties and this new normal situation. Let me read this disclaimer, as we are required to do at the beginning of all meetings, pursuant to the instructions from the President of the United States, Honorable Donald J. Trump, the Governor of Georgia, the Honorable Brian Kemp, and Mayor of Macon-Bibb County, Honorable Robert A. B. Rickert. The Macon-Bibb County Committee meeting scheduled for Tuesday, April the 28th, 2020 will be available to the Macon-Bibb Commissioners by conference call only for the 9 o'clock a.m. Committee meetings. The commission chambers will be closed to the public and the press as we follow the recommendation from the White House to limit public gatherings in order to slow the spread of COVID-19. Therefore, the public and press may only access the meeting simultaneously online at www.maconbibb.us or www.facebook.com/Macon-Bibb County. So thank everyone again for their patience. We'll start our meeting this morning with some announcements. We have several items for the Committee of the Whole. Following the Committee of the Whole, we'll try to have individual committee meetings, first being Economic and Community Development. Then we'll transition over and have Facilities and Engineering. And then finally, we'll have Operations and Finance if everything works well. We anticipate a couple of hours of meeting time. So without further ado, let me make a couple of announcements. There will be a very exciting Zoom video meeting tomorrow morning as we, a limited number of us, walk across the 2nd Street corridor bridge over the Norfolk Southern Railroad. They have been working on this bridge for over a year now. We are understanding that we are within 30 to 60 days of it being ready for vehicular access. But several commissioners, Commissioner Watkins and Commissioner Schlesinger, both of whose districts take up part of the 2nd Street corridor, and I will be there at 9:15 tomorrow morning, Wednesday morning, to look at the bridge, and we'll try to live stream that for the rest of the commissioners. We are trying to hold the number of people at the site to less than 10, but that's going to be an exciting meeting tomorrow morning that you'll want to try to tune into via Zoom. Further information on that will be posted later. Secondly, I'd like to give you a report. The Association of County Commissioners of Georgia is trying to have their regular nominations. The nominating committee has presented a slate of officers, and the mayor is designated as being the one to vote for Macon-Bibb County. And I have voted yes to the slate of officers recommended by the nominating committee. I'm going to give that slate of officers to the clerk, and she'll send it out to you. But incoming president will be Johnny Davis from Jefferson County, first vice president Steve Taylor from Bartow County, second vice president Melissa Hughes from Tift County, and third vice president Henry Craig from Baldwin County. Our own Tommy Stonecker, chairman of Houston County, is a district representative from District 6. So I'll turn that over to the clerk and get her to post that to you for your information. Next, as we convene the Committee of the Whole, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll to be sure we've got a quorum of people on the line. Madam Clerk, would you call the roll for us, please, ma'am?
Commissioner Tillman, Here.
Commissioner Bibbins? Commissioner Bibbins? Commissioner Allen?
Yeah.
Commissioner Lucas?
Here.
Commissioner Schlesinger?
Here.
Commissioner Jones?
Here.
Commissioner Shepard?
Here.
Commissioner Watkins?
Here.
Commissioner Wynn?
Present.
Good. We have 8 members of the commission, more than a quorum. So the first item of business is the approval of our minutes from our April the 14th committee meeting. Those minutes have been prepared and distributed. Are there any changes or corrections that we need to make to the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
Got a motion to approve from Wynn, second by
Schlesinger.
Schlesinger. All in favor of approval of the minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. The ayes have it, and we've approved the minutes from our previous meeting. We've got our first assistant county attorney on the line on the call with us. I'm going to call on him to ask him to give us a brief update as to the executive orders that continued to be issued by the Honorable Brian Kemp, Governor of the state of Georgia. Michael, are you there?
I am. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
So Governor Kemp has been busy issuing several executive orders over the last week. The first one I circulated around, we talked about a little bit last Tuesday, set out general guidelines for reopening the state of Georgia. He issued a second order late last Monday to extend the time for detention center and jail employees to get their certified jailer certificate while the post academy is closed. They normally have 6 months to become a certified jailer once they start working, but he's extended that time, and that was Order 4/2020-02. He issued an executive order on 4/23, extending a state of emergency relating to the Easter tornadoes and storms. That's not related to the pandemic, but another executive order nonetheless. Also on 4/23, he issued a 26-page order that he titled Reviving a Healthy Georgia. And that sets forth in detail on sort of an industry by industry basis a process for reopening. And that generally takes effect starting May 1st, which is this Friday. And I'll go through just kind of in broad strokes the different sections of this order. It maintains a lot of the social distancing requirements that were in previous orders. It encourages people to wear face coverings if they're outside the home, encourages generally use of heightened use of personal protective equipment, sanitation practices throughout the state, hygiene practices throughout the state. It prohibits local governments from allowing gatherings of 10 or more people, just like private organizations or businesses. It requires shelter in place for a number of certain high-risk individuals. Anyone that's over 65 years old, nursing home or care home patients, hospice patients, or patients with various different diseases or conditions that might make them high risk, such as lung disease, moderate or severe asthma, heart disease, compromised immune systems, severe obesity, diabetes, liver disease, or dialysis patients. They're required to shelter at home, and they're not allowed to receive visitors except for under limited circumstances for medical purposes or household support. But they are still able to travel for essential services or necessary travel, or if they work in a critical infrastructure environment. And so that includes things like getting groceries, maintaining their household. But that's a little bit stronger language than we've seen before out of previous orders. He allows restaurants to reopen for dine-in service, which started yesterday. But he sets out a list of 39 different practices that have to be employed. They range from requiring face masks for employees, spacing out customers, limiting the number of people based on the square footage of the dining area. They encourage use of paper menus rather than reusable plastic menus, closing salad bars and buffets, limiting parties to 6 people. And so there's a number of different, just similar kind of distancing and sanitation requirements that are imposed on restaurants. Then he gets into Section 5 of the order from the 23rd, gets into various specific industries for critical infrastructure businesses, which includes most of the government's operations. We're required to continue taking precautions to mitigate COVID-19 exposure. And it gives a suggested list of precautions, but doesn't mandate any specific precautions. And so some of these are just routine disinfecting surfaces, spacing people out, staggering shifts, encouraging telework, a lot of things that the county's already been doing. All operating businesses, whether they're critical or non-critical, are required to provide personal protective equipment as available to appropriate workers, and are required to provide disinfectants and sanitation products to people to clean workspaces, tools, and equipment as available, and are required to separate employee work sites to keep employees 6 feet apart to the extent possible. The order requires that all public swimming pools have to stay closed, along with certain other venues. And it has reduced requirements for employees who mainly work outside without regular contact with other people. It just says follow the CDC social distancing and hand washing guidelines for those people. There are specific requirements that go kind of industry by industry for grocery stores and food establishments, gyms and fitness centers, hair salons, body art studios, massage therapists, movie theaters and cinemas, and bowling alleys. And so for each of these categories, it sets out separate lists of protocols that need to be implemented for those businesses that choose to reopen to be allowed to reopen. Section 6 addresses the healthcare industry and essentially defers to the professional groups for like the American Dental Association, American Optometric Association, CDC recommendations, refers to these industry groups that have issued their own guidelines so that it doesn't interfere with the professional practices of healthcare services. It allows ambulatory surgery centers to reopen for elective surgery procedures. Section 7 is called Education and Children. It sets out some rules for public schools and higher education, and mostly focuses on child care centers. And for those groups, it defines a single location in the sense of no more than 10 people in a single location as being a single classroom. And so, you know, within the school building, you can have multiple people, but 10 people per classroom. Child care facilities have to stop transportation services except just to and from the facility. There are steps set out to make like child check-in and check-out contactless and limiting access to the centers. And to the extent that there are any children, any minors under the care of the Department of Family and Children's Services, it suspends the age limit that they're allowed to receive those services so that nobody is aging out of the system during the state of emergency. Section 8 really gets to the meat of what applies to us. This is the county and municipal governments section. And there are a couple of statutes that in the state of Georgia, if you don't do certain things, you're not allowed to get state funding. I don't believe that we're disqualified under either of these statutes, but you have to have a verified service delivery strategy, and you have to comply with the Equity in Sports Act, which requires similar sporting access for boys and girls. And if you don't qualify for either of those, then you're not allowed to get certain state funding. Well, this suspends that requirement so that everybody can get state funding in response to this emergency. It gives reporting extensions to the annual audit report, the annual financial report, and the grant certification form report that are required if any of those deadlines come up during the public health emergency or within 90 days after the public health emergency, then that deadline is extended by 90 days. It allows local governments to make their own rules for emergency management and to supplement the governor's order, but it repeats that we cannot be inconsistent with the order and we cannot issue rules that are more or less restrictive than the governor's order. So we can, I guess, address things that are not covered by the governor's order, but we can't otherwise be more or less restrictive than the rules already set out. And we cannot restrict the operation of businesses that are considered critical infrastructure. That ability is taken away. There's a couple of provisions relating to driver's licenses. During the public health emergency, they're not requiring on-the-road driving tests for people getting their driver's licenses. And they're suspending the requirement for 15-year-olds to hold a permit for 12 months before they get their license if they happen to turn 15 during the public health emergency. Section 10 is related to enforcement. It says that violations of the order are considered a misdemeanor, and any law enforcement officers are allowed to enforce the governor's order. Law enforcement officers are encouraged to give people a notice before they cite anyone or arrest anybody, and they are empowered if they give a business a notice and then they have 2 different citations for violating the order, then any local law enforcement officer can order the business to shut down for as long as this order remains effective, which again is starts May 1st and ends May 13th. And then it suspends all enforcement of any local orders that are more or less restrictive than the governor's order. The last section is just a miscellaneous section. It's mostly some boilerplate language, but the final paragraph I thought was particularly interesting. It says the governor's office may continue to issue guidance on the scope of the order through the media or through social media without the need for further executive orders. And so that seems to suggest that the governor may just go on and do a press conference or issue a statement through some system like Facebook or Twitter, and seems to suggest that he expects that to carry the force of law as official guidance and legally binding guidance on the state. And so that will possibly make it a little more challenging to follow what the state of things is as we go day to day throughout, this emergency situation. It may make it a little bit easier to overlook, if you're looking out for executive orders, there's a website that they're published, but now we've got to look out for executive orders plus whatever other possible social media outlets or press outlets the governor may use. So that's the April 23rd order. Again, the whole thing is 26 pages. It was sent around to all the commissioners and to all the county department heads and elected officials. And so you can see that in detail. And then there was one more order that was issued yesterday on the 27th. And that is, it expands a little bit on the order issued on April 23rd. It extends the deadlines for restaurant food safety inspections for restaurants that have maintained an A grade on their inspections. It gives an extra 120 days for the Department of Health to get back and inspect those places. It adds some definitions for hand sanitizer and for restaurants and dining rooms that were used in the April 23rd order. Let's see, there was a previous executive order issued on March the 20th that allowed the Department of Community Health to grant certain authorizations to expedite bringing doctors into service, like medical student trainee doctors, and bringing hospitals into operation. And that has been extended for up to 90 days beyond the end of the public health emergency. There was an executive order issued on April 8th that temporarily prohibited short-term vacation rentals through the end of April. The executive order from the 23rd extended that prohibition through May 13th. And then the order the governor issued yesterday unextended that so that it goes back to the original expiration date of April 30th. And then the executive order from the 23rd from last week that talked about opening bowling alleys and movie theaters to take effect on May 1st, that has been accelerated. So bowling alleys and movie theaters can begin operating immediately as long as they follow the protocols from the April 23rd order. And then he repeats the statement that the governor may issue additional guidance through other media outlets or social media without further executive orders. So it's been a lot. He's been very busy. I suspect he will continue to stay very busy for the next few weeks, and I'll continue to update you on any additional orders that may come through.
Excellent, Michael. Thank you very much for that. And because the order, I've got the county attorney that wants to add something to that. So let me call on County Attorney Duke Gruber at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. Excellent job, Michael. I did want to highlight something because I've gotten several questions about it. There's a section specifically related to businesses, barbershops, hair salons, tattoos, tanning salons, massage parlors that require person-to-person contact. And I encourage those that are listening to me, including in the public, to read those very carefully because they require a higher level of restriction and for safety precautions, including one patron per employee. You have to stay in your car if you get your hair cut before, there's one person allowed in the barbershop. It includes mandatory PPE, that is mask and gloves where available for those employees working in those facilities. And it requires workstations being more than 10 feet away. So I've had several questions specifically about those because it does require people to touch the employees to touch their patrons. So thank you, Mayor.
Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor.
Does he see us? Mr. Mayor?
Mr. Mayor.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yeah, you hear you now.
Okay, good. Sorry. I was
Mr. Mayor.
saying thank you. I was saying thank you to Duke. We appreciate all the hard work. Michael's summary was in an email format and was sent out to you. So check your inbox to get Michael's summary. And he did say, even though it's a long email, it's a lot shorter than the sum total of all the executive orders that he's summarizing. In light of the recommendations in the governor's order, I have decided to continue with our Zoom meetings through Tuesday, the 12th of May. The governor's order specifically goes to May the 13th. That's when the state of health emergency expires. That's when his order expires. So I'm thinking that our Zoom meeting on the 12th will be our final Zoom meeting. Therefore, I'm going to have the next meetings following the 12th. On the 19th of May, we're going to try to be live here in Commission Chambers. That meeting also, the meeting date of May the 19th, we're going to have a special call meeting at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And that'll be for the budget presentation. Hold on just a minute, Commissioner Allen, I'll get to you momentarily. We're going to have a budget presentation at the special call meeting at 4 o'clock on May the 19th, and we'll be sending out that notice. Then we'll go into pre-commission and regular commission meeting that evening. But we will start with a 4 o'clock the special call meeting for the purpose of presenting the budget to you. That's exactly 6 weeks ahead of our July the 1st date. So that's the way we'll be handling meetings through the 19th. So we'll be on Zoom through the 12th, but then the 19th, we hope we'll be meeting live here in Assembly at Commission Chambers. Next item on our agenda
Yeah.
for the committee.
Mr. Mayor.
Allen.
Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Allen.
Mr. Mayor, you know, I listened to that very closely, and I understand that we have a lot of things that's going to be going on in our community with beauty salons and nail salons and people getting close to one another, and there are penalties for it. Who's going to cover all this? I mean, you know, our deputy sheriffs have a lot to do. Our people in our health department are running a little short in the health department field. I mean, how are we going to handle all this? Have they thought about that, or they think we just got an overabundance of people?
Commissioner Allen, the only thing I'll say is I watched the governor's press conference yesterday afternoon, and he indicated that he was very proud of the citizens of Georgia for voluntarily complying to a large extent and complying with orders from law enforcement if and when requests were made to disperse, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that the governor is basically relying on voluntary compliance by individuals with the terms of his order. But we, again, I think I'm correct in paraphrasing what Michael just told us. We are prohibited from implementing any order that's either more than or less restrictive than the governor's order. So we're just going to have to encourage people to voluntarily comply, shelter in place where they can, follow all the protocols when they are involved in business meetings. That's the only thing I can tell you, Commissioner Allen.
Okay, that's what I figured.
That's just kind of where we are. And was there somebody else that wanted to?
Mr. Mayor, this is Valerie Wynn.
Commissioner Wynn, go ahead.
Michael and Duke, just for clarification, because we don't really hear this being addressed in the order, but what about truly small business? And I think of boutiques and gift shops. I look at Ingleside and I think the shops there probably have 1 or 2 people in there at any time, if that. And I just wonder, does this mean they still have to stay closed?
No.
No?
No, they are non-critical, and they are allowed to perform minimum basic activity, but that includes seeing customers.
Okay, so say a small dress boutique or a little clothing store with 1 customer in it, that can stay open?
Yes, that's that's non-critical infrastructure, and they are allowed under the governor's order, as I understand it, to perform minimum basic functions, which does allow them include seeing customers.
Okay. All right,
County Attorney Gruber, anything further?
As long as they have to abide by all social distancing requirements
Right.
and the sanitation, and if it's not critical, it's a shall in the order, which means it's mandatory. They've got to abide by certain cleaning protocols, PPE protocols, and things like that.
So the employees should wear a mask if possible.
Correct.
And make sure they have sanitation in the store, like wiping off door handles and things like
Correct.
that. Okay.
Screening, like for example, when a patron comes in or somebody comes in, including employees, they have to give them a temperature check, make sure they don't have a temperature, send them home if they do, like that.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Commissioner Lucas, I see your hand up.
Yeah, thank you. I just want to thank all of the commissioners for your expression in the resolution that was passed. I've spoken to a bunch of citizens who appreciated our concern for them. However, there is still concern about our factories. We have had some deaths of employees at some of the factories, and I don't know the solution to that particular problem. But I also want to say that Commissioner Allen and I are making sure that you get the latest information, and Janice has been very nice in sending all of the latest statistics from the health department out to all members of the commission so that you can see the trend in the community. And I want you to know the trend is still up. We are still increasing as far as infections as well as deaths in the community, which means we need to really make sure that we emphasize all of those health precautions because we are not headed in the right direction. And the makeshift hospital has been set up there at Navison in anticipation of increases. So I'm not a gloom and doom person, but I don't want us to lose our citizens to this virus. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody stayed alert and that you paid attention to all the stats coming from the health department. Thank you.
Thank you,
Mr. Mayor.
Commissioner Lucas. Going on, if there's nothing else, the next
Mayor.
item on,
I think you got Commissioner Bivens trying to say something.
I cannot hear Commissioner Bivens, so if
Tillman.
anybody can. Go
Stillman.
ahead, Commissioner Bivens.
Tillman.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention that I'm not sure if she understood when the roll was called. I might have been muted. I don't know.
Well, good. We're glad you're on now, Commissioner Bivens. Thank you very much. That's
All right,
excellent.
thank you.
The next item on our agenda is basically just an informational item. But we wanted to loop in all of the commissioners so you would know what we're doing. We continue on the administrative side to look for ways to improve performance and save money wherever we can. Many of you will remember Mark Johnson, who came in and joined the team that we had in place with Terminus Financial Advisors when we were looking at healthcare insurance and trying to come up with a healthcare plan. Mark has come back to us with some recommendations after seeing some workers' compensation statistics and thinks that we can do better on workers' compensation. And he's going to make a presentation about basically making him an agent of record so that he can access other information and come up with some recommendations that would take official actions to implement. But this is basically just to give him a letter of recommendation or letter of record to make him an agent of record for purposes of workers' compensation. Mark, have I totally messed that up, or can you unmute yourself and straighten us all out?
I'll do my best, Mayor. Thank you for that introduction. How's everybody doing today?
Great.
Great. I know you guys. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Commissioner, and Dr. Moffitt, everybody, for giving me an opportunity to talk about the results of a review we did on the workers' compensation program. That review included all of the different coverages that you have, as well as your TPA and several other services that are workers' comp related. But what I wanted to do first is start out by introducing a team that helped me with our review. I didn't do this all alone. Of course, I do have Parker Raines, who's Executive Vice President of the East Region for Property and Casualty with the firm, my Fisher Brown Bottrell. Thomas Pope, also, he's a Senior Vice President. He's the Manager of Risk Services for Fisher Brown Bottrell, as well as John Cooper, who's Vice President of Workers' Compensation with Amwins Brokerage in the Carolinas. I assembled this team to help me with the analysis of the workers' compensation program. And as a result of that, we found some interesting things that we see as opportunities as well as some concerns. When we reviewed your compensation program from an insurance standpoint, we also looked at a bunch of your other policies, liability policies as well. So I'm going to give you some feedback on what we found across the board. When we review the policies, of course, we look at the coverage details, your limits. We look at all the exclusions, the type policies that are in place, the policy form, whether it's an admitted policy and the wording. And of course, cost is always important as well. When we reviewed the policies, we came back with some really kind of concerning things. And I'm going to get John Cooper to kind of chime in on some of the specific things on the workers' compensation side, as well as on the liability side. And let me just back up a bit. The workers' compensation policies are bundled in with some of your other property and casualty policies. So we could not just simply look at the workers' compensation policies alone. We had to look at some of your liability coverages as well. So John, if you don't mind, John Cooper with AmWinds, jump in here and give some examples of some of the things we found that we think are of concern, and take a little, give a couple examples of how that can impact Macon-Bibb County from your perspective.
Absolutely. Can everybody hear me?
We can. Go ahead.
Excellent. All right. Well, listen, y'all, I appreciate your time this morning and deeply regret that I can't be there to discuss this with you in person. Although, if I'm being real honest, I probably regret the fact that I can't eat at H&H afterwards more. I have a deep love for that place. At any rate, getting into your excess comp. So I am a casualty broker, but my specialty is excess workers' compensation for self-insureds in all of its many forms, and then some of the casualty lines that go along with that. As Mark mentioned, your policy is tied up in no less than 3 different policies. 2 are what we'd call buffer layers that are just stacked in front of your statutory layer. All workers' compensation policies have to be statutory in nature, meaning basically that they're unlimited in cost on what they will provide until there's a settlement reached. The first layer of your self-insured comp provided by Great American on a policy that's not even a workers' compensation policy. It's an excess liability policy, and it excludes all first responders. So, I don't worry much about Mayor Rickard's secretary having a $2 million claim, but I worry deeply about firefighters who run into burning buildings, and policemen who get shot at and drive fast without seatbelts a lot, and emergency medical technicians who are going to be dealing at the front lines of this COVID, transporting people to the hospital. So you are completely exposed on that level for basically up to $1.5 million. That policy would normally kick in at $750,000. But like I said, it excludes all of those people. Even for the people it does cover when it comes to COVID, the policy in its base state excludes occupational disease. This policy has an endorsement added in that adds it, but with language that I think a lawyer could get out of real quickly. That defines occupational disease as an environmental or physical hazard, which sounds a lot more like asbestos than it does COVID-19. So even if some of your employees who aren't first responders got it, I'm not sure they're covered by this. So potentially you're exposed to $1.5 million in all of those. In the second layer, it excludes any sort of payment of the employee's salary, wages, or remuneration, of any sort. But even more disturbingly, it excludes employers' liability. And let's go back to those first responders that are, excluded up to 1.5 million. This second layer goes from 1.5 million to 2 million. And if you have no employer's liability, which you would not have, in the first layer as well, you now have no employer's liability up until $2 million for all of your first responders. And it's very easy to see that a first responder could sue the city or the county for lack of proper training, lack of proper equipment, all of those sorts of things, which would be deemed negligent activities and therefore employer's liability on the part of the city and county. So those are 2 really, really, really big holes that would keep me up at night. And you're also paying a collective $200,000 for those 2 policies that, in my opinion, aren't really covering all that much. Now, the next one, the casualty package, or what used to be the casualty package, it's essentially looked at as a auto liability package with the way it's currently set up. But it is technically a casualty package, which would include some general liability insurance. But the limits of liability are way too low, and it excludes a lot of critical lines of coverage. Now, in Georgia, both the county and the city receive a strong sovereign immunity, but there are certain things that immediately zip around sovereign immunity. The first would be law enforcement liability. So going back to what Commissioner Allen was saying about the deputies having to go break up a large gathering. Well, if something happens there and someone sues the city or the county for law enforcement liability, if there is a racial component to it, immediately becomes a hate crime and immediately goes to federal court. So the city and county have no sovereign immunity in that situation. The same is true for any sort of a cyber violation. You're sitting on a lot of data for your constituents, and you currently, as far as I can tell, have no cyber coverage. So those would be typically wrapped up in the casualty package, but currently are not even included. Even on when I was saying the limits are too low, and that's just on the GL. These are two lines that just aren't included. So, without belaboring the point, I think you can see that there's some gaping holes in protecting the, interests of the financial interests of the city and county, and then also the employees, so that they get the coverage and payments that they need. So, with that, I'll kick it back to Mark unless someone has some questions.
Well, thank you, John. I know we've said a mouthful there, but we looked at it there. We looked at this, as I said, look at the coverage details, limits, exclusions. And what we found was that there are several gaps in the coverages in the policies you have that we think we can solve for you in the market by doing a comprehensive marketing of your coverage. And so that, to the mayor's earlier point, we are asking for broker of record change effective May 1. That will give us the authority to solicit and put together bid parameters and quotes and proposals for the Macon-Bibb County as it relates to these policies. And in short, that's pretty much it. We're able to answer any other questions you want us to answer about that review. But that's pretty much the meat of what we wanted to talk about. Yes.
Mark, I also would like to add for the commissioners that Mark's fee for this is already covered in our contract with Terminus. So Mark is already a partner with us in this. And so we appreciate him giving us this background and this knowledge to help us try to make a more economical decision as it comes to our workers' comp.
So Mark, and how close was I in saying that you need a letter from us to make you agent of record so that you can look at our insurance coverage and then make specific recommendations back to us?
Well, you were correct. Yeah, that is correct. And to echo what Keith's point, we did the preliminary review. Everything is part of the Terminus arrangement. One of the things that we proposed in addition to reviewing the policies was to help with some risk services. That's why I have Thomas Pope on the phone. Under the Fisher Brown model, we have a Fisher Brown 365 risk services program that we feel we need to support your risk management team with some overall analysis and review of their programs around things from fit for duty, safety, also leveraging services that's available from your specific carrier. So the reason we're asking for that broker of record is that gives us the control to structure the program well as financially it helps support the services that we will provide on the backside as we service you and support you going forward as your broker of record.
All right, but as I understand it, you would have to bring back specific proposals that the commission would have to review and approve. Is that right?
That is exactly right, Mayor. That is correct. 100%.
So it is my intention, unless there's concern on the part of members of the commission, to go ahead and give this broker of record a letter to Mark Johnson and his group, so that they can do this comprehensive review and come back to us with some specific suggestions and recommendations. Is there any objection, question, or comment? Commissioner Watkins, got you.
Yeah, just a couple follow-ups. And thank you for the review, the policy review. I think I understand what you're saying, that right now we're paying, well, we have a very low liability where we're self-insured. So if one of our officers or several of our employees were to be hurt or injured on the job, it could cost us up to $1.5 million per person. And if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that the 1.5 million is extremely high based upon the market. And I'm assuming that our previous year's history, where we were trading off a high access amount for a low premium number. So I was wondering what our annual premium was at this point, and how much did we or have we paid out in the last year because we're self-insured?
Sure, I can talk to that. So in last year's 3 policies, you paid a collective ballpark of a little over $400,000. But something that's really key to think about when you're looking at excess workers' comp, I don't know, are y'all familiar with Willie Sutton, the bank robber from the 30s? There's a story that when the FBI caught him, they asked him, "Why do you rob banks?" And he said, "Well, because that's where the money is." And in self-insured workers' compensation, the money is in the money that you pay below the retention. So 80 to 90% of your total cost of risk is actually what you pay underneath the retention. And it's millions of dollars. So by lowering your retention, and more importantly, implementing the risk services that Mark was talking about, and attacking your claims, at the source, so that you're reducing both the frequency and the severity of them, that's where you achieve meaningful savings in workers' compensation at an order of magnitude that dwarfs what, I'm one of the better, if not the best, excess workers' compensation brokers in the country, but what you can save by reducing the frequency and severity of your own claims will do much better than anything I can do on your policy. But yes, at the moment you have very high limits. You're not paying, nothing for them, but I worry that you're paying a lot for what really isn't a terribly great amount of coverage. And you have to have pretty extreme events.
And if I understood you right, last year we paid $400,000.
Yeah, ballpark. I think it was 200. It was about 100 each for the first 2 layers, and 200, a little over 200, maybe like 210 for the statutory layer.
And did we have any exposure in terms of being self-insured? Folks who, I guess we had to pay their medical bills, or that didn't trigger?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Particularly on the first responders, the first 1.5 million is not covered. There's no coverage for those first responders.
Right. And that's where you have, as a municipality, I would say 85 to 90% of your exposure for a high dollar claim is sitting in your first responders, because they have the riskiest jobs. You can have high dollar claims that are, black strains and things like that could happen to anybody, but the first responders take the brunt of it.
How many claims did we pay in total?
What's that?
Got a couple more questions, Commissioner Watkins.
How much claims did we? Still the first question. How much in claims did we pay in total?
Give me 1 second, and I can tell you what you paid in the last year. Oh, let me
pull that too.
Let's see, because we did look at that as part of our review for y'all.
I'm pulling it up too. Let's see if we can get there.
John, while you look for that, and Mark, while you look for that, I got a couple of other questions. Then we'll come back to Commissioner Watkins. Commissioner Allen had a question.
Okay.
Commissioner Allen, you there?
He needs to unmute.
Yeah, you may need to unmute yourself. Touch the top of your screen and unmute yourself.
There you go.
Yeah. I was unmuted.
Well, we can hear you now, so be careful.
Hey, Commissioner.
No, you're muted again, Joe.
Yeah, unmute again. How about that?
There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Mark.
Yes, sir.
You talked about earlier taking this to next month, the first of next month. Is that talking about the individuals that we do have that might be getting sick? I mean, could it go back a month or so?
No, that's not retroactively changing your coverage, that is assigning us as the broker of record to give us the authority to go out to the market and get the bids, proposals to bring back to the commission on how we would restructure the overall program.
But I understood, did I not understand you say that some of these individuals basically would not be covered?
Well, under your current policy today, you have under the point that we were making earlier about everyone has coverage, is that you have a deductible. Since you're self-insured, the city and county takes a certain amount of exposure, what you call a retention. And the main concern that we revealed or we're talking about is on the first responders. Your current workers' comp excess policy does not kick in for first responders until after $1.5 million per first responder. Okay. So that exposure is, as John mentioned, we would expect that 75, 80% of your claims on the work comp side are going to come from your first responders. They're the ones that are actually in, they're performing some pretty risky tasks day to day. Firefighters, emergency management people, and your police or your sheriffs.
So it's going to take us 5 more days to get this to put in place by putting you in there, right?
Well, your policy expires June 30. Your current policy expires June 30. Our goal is to replace that policy by July 1st. And I don't think we could do it any sooner than that, because you've already paid the premium for your current policy. I think you paid that in full, or you should have paid it in full last year in last year's budget. But John, you might want to speak to. I don't know that we can. I don't know that we can accelerate the effective
I'm lost on that. Yeah.
I don't know if we can accelerate the effective date on that beyond July 1 or earlier than July 1.
Joe, I think
not without incurring some penalties on that,
right,
financial penalties.
Right. Joe, I think I can clarify for you to say that basically this is what the insurance coverage that we have now is excess. We are self-insured for the first $1.5 million. So our first responders, right there, they're covered, but it's through self-insurance. We just pay the claims up to $1.5 million. What Mark is saying is he thinks that there's coverage out there that would be a better bargain for us rather than being self-insured for the first $1.5 million. So that's what we're authorizing him to see if we can shop and find a policy that we could purchase and be effective July the 1st.
But that 1.5 is not per incident. It's for the whole domain of individuals we have, correct?
No, I think it's per person. I think it's per claim.
Well, as I was saying, it's technically per occurrence. So let's say, and y'all did actually have this exact scenario happen many years ago. There were 4 firefighters that were fighting a fire and the floor collapsed underneath them. All 4 of them became one claim. So it is kind of a per occurrence, but typically you're going to have individuals hurt one by one. It's, having a multiple claimant scenario is not the normal. Usually it's one by one. So you're on the hook for $1.5 million on each and every scenario that involves a first responder.
And that's, y'all need to fix that.
Yep. So that's in the press. What we did.
And to go back to Commissioner Watkins' question real quick. So looking back at your loss runs, the tough thing about loss runs in excess comp is you can't really judge them until they're completely closed out. And the nearest thing y'all have to a completely closed out year in the past 5 years is the 2015-16 year. You still have 5 open claims. You've paid $1.9 million already. They expect those remaining 5 claims to run up another $1.3 million. So you're looking at a total, by the time it's all said and done, estimated total right now that the cities and county are going to pay out at $3,323,516.29. Okay. So, if your excess costs you a little bit more to get, those numbers down or get the risk management services, help you get those numbers down, that's, like I said, that's where the money is.
And if I'm understanding thank you for that. If I'm understanding your process correctly, your focus would be to get that $1.5 million per occurrence number down.
Correct.
That's part of it. Yep.
$4,000 premium amount annual
Right.
premium.
Right. So
That's
that
correct.
if we let them shop around, maybe we reduce the self-insured to $200,000 or $300,000 and have insurance beyond that point for each claim. But he's got to shop that and see where the break point is. How much risk you want to retain self-insured versus how much you want to have insurance for. But that's what he's going to try to shop and see what he can find in the market for us.
Any idea
Commissioner
what the
Jones?
target is?
Say that one more time.
What the
Commissioner
target?
Watkins.
I say, any idea what the target would be? I know, like right now we're at 1.5 million.
Well, I think in the marketplace today, I should be able to find 750,000. I might be able to get it a little lower, and it's because of COVID, and because these guys are on the front line. Insurance companies are understandably shaky at the moment. The industry is set to lose somewhere in the range of about $80 billion, it's estimated, over COVID-19, just through workers' compensation. So, it's a tough time to be shopping. I'm not going to lie to you. This might be a multi-year process where we get what we can get this year, and then next year we get a little better, and next year we get a little better as this, epidemic becomes controlled. And, hopefully there's a vaccine and life begins to shade back a little towards normal again. But for right now, I think it's very feasible for me to get it down to 750, with including the first responders.
Okay.
Thank you, John. Commissioner Watkins, do you have a follow-up question to that?
Yeah, and so the goal of all of that is to get that $3.3 million number down to something well below that.
Well, on the backside of it, let me jump in there, John. The insurance piece is one component. Well, and then the second piece is going to be looking at your workers' compensation TPA, who's been in place for a number of years but hasn't been reviewed or needs to be bidded out as well. So we're putting together an invitation to bid for that we would run through purchasing and legal at Macon-Bibb County to source for a new TPA, basically to put a bid out for the TPA on the work comp side. And then in addition to that, bringing in the risk services team to do some discovery on how you're currently managing your work comp processes and coming up with some additional programs that either we would first look to leverage free programs from your excess carriers, your work comp TPA, and then we would supplement as we see fit some of those services from the risk services side on the Fisher Brown 365 program. But once again, we don't. The only issue with that, we don't know what we don't know right now on the internal processes. So we're looking at the external things. The insurance is one component, which John has spoke to. The third-party administrator who processes those claims for you on workers' comp, since you're self-insured, that's a second component that's coming late fall, midsummer to the end of the year. And then the third component of it is the actual risk services, which is the discovery of your internal risk management department, looking at how things are done and managed internally to help try to mitigate or to close some of those open claims, and looking at ways to help supplement what you do on the risk management side internally. So that's sort of the three-pronged approach that we're looking at. It's the insurance, the TPA who pays the claims, as well as your internal risk management department.
Good. Thank you, Mark. I got one other question, I think, from Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Jones, you there?
Can you hear me?
Can now.
I hear you now.
Okay. Just a comment. I'm glad Mark and John and Thomas are reviewing it. I guess I'm a little bit taken aback, and I know it's a balancing act between cost and risk, but I'm a little bit taken aback that we had that much deductibility or exclusion for first responders of $1.5 million. That's a little surprising to me.
Good. Well, like I said, absent concern, we're going to give a broker of record letter to Mark so they can go out into the market and shop for us and see it. But that's all they can do. They'll have to come back and make specific proposals. We'll refer that through the committee process so everybody will know and understand what's going on. Anything else for Mark and his team?
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, it's Larry Schlesinger. You mentioned that the annual premium was around $400,000 right now, and that's not adequate for what we really need. I know we're dealing with a pretty complex situation, but how much do you think the premium would be if we really did what we needed to do to protect the county properly?
I think that's exactly what they're gonna find out and bring back to us.
Any ballpark guesstimates?
Yeah, normally Commissioner Schlesinger, I could give you a pretty good estimation. But right now I would hate to overpromise and underdeliver. It is just kind of the Wild West as far as, mainly because right now we're truly in the, I guess the exploratory / understanding phase of how this is all going to impact the industry. So it's just kind of impossible to say because legislation changes daily from state to state. The exposures change daily from state to state. You know, for instance, one thing I kind of wonder about with y'all is I'm going to try to get out and get your coverage quoted as fast as possible, because if the freedom that Georgia is now allowing citizens kicks off a second wave, that wave will start to peak around the time your new policy would start. So wouldn't it be nice if we get this thing in place before, you know, they have a reason to say no? That would be my goal here. So I wish I could be more specific, and I apologize for not being able to. But you know, well, I expect. One thing I can say is I expect you'll spend more money, but your coverage and what you will get out of it will you know, return on investment will be exponential.
Yeah, I think finding the sweet spot, Commissioner Schlesinger, is exactly what Mark and his team are going to try to do. How much do you want to pay in premium in order to reduce your self-insured retention layer that'll actually save you money? So that they're trying to find that sweet spot. So we'll come back to you after they've had a chance to shop the market for us. All we're doing today is just moving ahead and giving them the broker of record line. Commissioner Lucas, have you got a final comment before we move on? Unmute yourself.
Do you need a motion to proceed from this point?
I do not think so. I think we're just going to, I just wanted to loop y'all in and let you know what we were doing, let Mark make his initial presentation. But no, I don't think you'd need
but this is official action. So can we just?
If you feel like you would like to make that motion, I certainly would accept it.
I would, because I think it's official action, and I think I am happy to see us do something on this particular area, risk management, especially where it concerns those cases that have been lingering on and on and on. We've got employees who've been off the job, but who are still. There's a lot to be done there. So I'm happy to see that. And I would move that we authorize you to proceed with the next step in this process.
I'll second.
May I ask a question on clarification?
Go ahead,
Commissioner Lucas. You're asking them to come back with their variety of recommendations.
Right. This is just authorizing the mayor to move on this one step.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll second that.
Good. Got a motion and second. Further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Very good. Mark, thank you very much for being on the line, you and your team. We appreciate it. We're going to move on now. Got another couple of items in the committee of the whole.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you very much for your time, everyone.
All right. I was going to give you all a very brief update on the pay scale study. Dr. Duhart, are you on the line? Can you do that for us?
Yeah, she's right here.
Good morning.
Good morning.
On this past Friday, I had a conference call with Carolyn Long with Management Advisory Group just to get an update on where we are with our pay scale. Our employees did a job analysis questionnaire a few weeks ago, and our department heads and elected officials were able to review those responses for our employees. So right now, Management Advisory Group, they are in the process of perusing that information, those responses. So we are currently on track. She did tell me that they will have some preliminary numbers, but they will be very preliminary in a couple weeks for us.
Good. Thank you, Dr. Duhart. Questions for commissioners of Dr. Duhart?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Commissioner Watkins.
Yeah, you said you were on track. On track for what date?
We're on track for that initial 120 days that they gave us initially. That was by doing those job descriptions beforehand, so that that wouldn't slow down the process.
And so now, just refresh me. We're expecting to see what calendar day are we thinking that 120 days ends on?
It's going to be sometime toward mid-June, July. Is it mid-June? The 120 days?
Yes.
Mid-June.
And you say you have preliminary numbers next couple weeks?
Yes, but they will be very preliminary.
And are y'all using that to influence your budget decisions, or how would that work?
Well, that's a great segue, Commissioner Watkins. The last point I was going to try to cover with you was kind of our FY21 budget schedule. I did indicate to you earlier that we're going to have a budget presentation on May the 19th, special call meeting, 4:00 in the afternoon, May the 19th. That's exactly 6 weeks out. But I'm going to tell you, this is going to be pardon my expression, but this is going to be a very difficult budget to put together. Number one, we are in the process of trying to forecast revenues and what losses we're going to sustain from hotel, motel taxes, sales taxes, TAVIT, title ad valorem taxes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And we don't know what, if any, money is coming to us from the federal government. There's discussions going on at the federal level, but I think it's safe to say that there's a difference of opinion as to how much money to give to states, cities, and counties, and when that money will come, and how much it will be, and what it will be for. We really don't know yet. So you've got a huge unknown as far as your revenues are concerned. You also going to have a huge concern, I'm afraid, as far as what your expenses are going to be, what we're going to run into for the next. I really anticipate that we will adopt a budget, but it's going to have a lot of questions in it. And I think it would kind of call on the commission to have a supplemental budget session in January of 2021. That'd be about halfway into the new year. Your new mayor will be, and your new commission will be in office then, and that they would be able to try to do a supplemental budget adjustment to see where we are. So that really is my analysis of where we are budget wise. So we'll start off with a proposed budget on the 19th and have 6 weeks of debate and try to get a budget in place before July the 1st. I'll be honest with you, I don't want to see any sort of a tax increase. I think we need to hold the line on taxes and try to see where we're going to be revenue wise with all these unknowns to it. Try to put a budget in place by July the 1st. And then let the new commission do a supplemental budget analysis in January. Questions, comments, or thoughts about the proposed budget schedule?
Makes sense.
It is.
I understand Commissioner Allen got a question. Commissioner Jones, do you have a question as well?
Just that makes sense to me.
Okay, good. Commissioner Allen, you had a question or comment?
Bob.
There you go. You're unmuted. Go ahead, Commissioner Allen.
It's the pay study committee that we put together a couple of years ago. They still involved in this, and we had talked about early on. Are they still going to be involved?
Yes. Yeah, that's why. But what Dr. Duhart was just saying, we hope to have preliminary numbers in the next couple of weeks. Plug that into the budget at some point, for an effective date. Not sure exactly when that is. I'll be honest with you. Whether it's July the 1st, is the way I know several of you want it to be, or whether it'll be January the 1st when we know a little bit more about where we're going to be. But that's going to be something for the Operations and Finance Committee to think about and to plan on.
Okay, but they are part, they will be part of this because we put them
Yeah.
in place to do that.
Yes, correct. It is certainly my intention, and I'll just tell you, my budget is going to include the pay scale implementation. I'm just saying, I'm not sure whether I can do it July the 1st or January the 1st, but that'll
Well,
be
we
a
could do it in
question.
August, we have to. We don't have to. I mean, we got time to work on it.
That's right. That's exactly right. So, and we will. But
That's
yes,
all-
it
that's all
is,
I'm trying to get
my
at. This is
intention
our
to include,
job. This
it
year
is
is
my
our
intention
job
to
to put
include
in
the pay
place.
scale.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep. Anything else before we move on? That's the end of my agenda for Committee of the Whole. Thank you all for your patience. We've run a little over an hour, and I didn't anticipate it being quite that long. So I thank everybody. Let me turn this over now to Chairman Lucas to see if we can proceed with the Economic and Community Development Committee. And just to remind everybody, members of the Economic and Community Development Committee, Chairman Lucas, the Vice Chair is Commissioner Schlesinger. You got Commissioner Bivens, Commissioner Shepard, and Commissioner Watkins on Economic and Community Development. So Commissioner Lucas.
Okay, thank you. And good morning to everyone that I haven't had a chance to speak to. It is great being able to see everybody. So thank you to the folks who were able to get the Zoom meeting together. It's just great seeing all of you. We'll go ahead and call this meeting of Economic and Community Development Committee to order. As the mayor has said, your members are Lucas, Schlesinger, Bivens, Shepard, and Watkins. We will call now for approval of minutes. We'll entertain a motion.
Second.
Okay, it's been motion and second to approve the minutes. Any further discussion on the minutes? If not, all in favor, say aye. Opposed? All right, and so the minutes are approved. The next item is appointments to authorities, boards, and commissions. Item A is a resolution appointing Mary Brooks Warren to the Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful Board. Ms. Warren has been here with us all morning. We are glad to have you here. Are we seeing everybody? All right, Ms. Warren is here. Thank you so much for being here. We'll go ahead and entertain a motion.
Move.
Okay, it's been motioned and second to approve the nomination. Ms. Warren, is there anything you'd like to share with us about your potential service on Keep Macon-Bibb Beautiful?
No, I've been there before and I've served on many of the other commissions, boards there, and I look forward to being able to do it again.
Okay, any questions? Comments? All right, if not, all in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right, so we will recommend approval to the full commission next Tuesday. And thank you so much. You're welcome to hang in here with us. We've got a lot more excitement to go. So, but thank you. Thank you. Item B is a resolution appointing Karen W. Hicks to the Fort Hawkins Board. Is Ms. Hicks on with us? No. Okay, well, committee, what shall we do?
Yeah, Commissioner, Chairman Lucas, if I may, I'll just tell you, her bio was attached to the schedule, but she's a recent graduate of Leadership Macon, as I understand it, indicated an interest in serving on the Fort Hawkins board. So I would sorry that we don't have her on the line, but perhaps you can pass this tentatively and try to get her on the pre-commission agenda for next Tuesday.
All right, is that okay with the members of the committee? That
I'll
we
make
do it that way?
I'll make that motion.
Okay,
Second.
we've got a motion and second to approve this nomination pending the pre-commission next week. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, so that is approved. I understand, and it's not on my paper here, but I've seen Mr. Wilson here all morning. So I know he's here for a reason.
Yeah, that's exactly right. He's being nominated to be reappointed to the Pension and Retirement System Division A. And he has been patiently waiting
Yeah, he has.
for his reappointment. He has done a yeoman's job in that regard. Had some health issues, but has come back from those and wants to serve again. And I'm delighted that he does.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, how are you this morning?
Doing fine, thank you.
That's great. That is great. Let's go ahead and entertain a motion on that.
I'll make that
appointment.
motion. Harold is the chair of the pension board.
It's been motion. Did we get a second?
Second.
It's been motioned and second to approve Mr. Wilson for reappointment. Any discussion? Mr. Wilson, you want to say anything about your service on that board?
None other than I'm very honored to be considered. My fellow board members have extended a trust to brief me as vice chair. I mean, as chairperson. And of course, you of having a place. And
Okay, we're having a hard time hearing you. All right.
Just a reminder to those who aren't speaking, please leave your microphone muted so we can hear everyone else who is speaking. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Wilson, we didn't hear everything you had to say, but we are certain that it was wonderful. So thank you. We all know of your work and your commitment to Macon-Bibb. So did we get a motion?
You do.
You did.
Okay, it's been motioned and second to approve this reappointment. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, and so congratulations, Mr. Wilson. We will recommend your reappointment at next Tuesday's commission meeting. All right, I think that ends our agenda. Is there anything else to come before the board, this committee? All right, if not, the only thing we're going to continue to want to get updates on the movie industry, and also to get an update from the Macon-Bibb Health Department on anything that we need to know where that's concerned. So if there's nothing else, then we'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So move.
So move.
All right, it's been motion and second that we adjourn, and we are adjourned, Mr. Mayor.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Chairman Lucas. Next, we're going to call on the Facilities and Engineering Committee, Chairman Jones, and members of that committee are Vice Chair Joe Allen, Virgil Watkins, Larry Schlesinger, and Bert Bivens are members of the Facilities and Engineering Committee. Chairman Jones, can you take over and conduct your meeting, please, sir?
Can everyone hear me?
Can now.
Okay. Good morning.
Good morning.
I look forward to seeing everybody in person on May the 12th. That will be a great day. So
May the 19th.
Oh, the 19th. Okay. Well, I look forward to all the May, that's right, May
right.
19th. Same day as the election was supposed to be. All right. Good morning. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
So moved.
I've got a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. The only item we have on the agenda is about solar canopy, and I'm hoping Rob Riles is tuned in. Do you know if he's supposed to be here, Mayor?
He is, and I see him there. He may need to unmute himself so that we can hear him. Rob, are you there?
Yes, sir. I'm here.
Hey, Rob, can you give us some information on the solar canopy project, please, sir?
Yes, sir. Thanks, Commissioner. Thanks you all for the opportunity to be here this morning and to talk about the next solar opportunities that we have available, and that's to install a solar energy array for the tax commissioner's office, which will be a canopy similar to the one at the Sheriff's Investigative Center over the parking lot. And the other one will be at South Bibb Rec Center. We'll have opportunity to install one there that's going to be a little larger than the one at the tax commissioner's office. The one at the South Bibb, though, is going to be our first rooftop solar installation. We're wanting to go that route at South Bibb because there's so much still going on with the real estate out there with another phase of tennis courts and different stuff out there we didn't want to take over here. This is a similar rooftop installation that Cherry Street Energy's installed at the MLK Aquatic Center in Atlanta that we visited and looked at. Very impressed with the installation, but there'll be at no cost as the master agreement requires. The contract with Cherry Street Energy, they assume all installation, all the costs to put the system in. They also assume any risk with rates going up or down. The rates cannot go up unless our Georgia Power rates go up. We start out with a cheaper rate than we pay for traditional Georgia Power to begin with, and that gap can only get wider as Georgia Power's rate goes up at a higher rate than the maximum escalator for Cherry Street Energies, which is 1.5 cents per kilowatt hour. But we look forward to being able to install these two solar arrays and enjoy more savings while also expanding our green initiatives and becoming more eco-friendly with the sustainable renewable solar energy.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
May I make one, ask Rob to answer one question? What sort of success have we had with the solar array at the sheriff's office?
We have enjoyed a lot of savings, as well as we've reduced our carbon footprint for that on that array. I can get you the totals on the amount. I don't have them right here with me, Mr. Mayor, but we're definitely paying less for power over there also than we were paying initially for traditional Georgia Power. I can also get you the number of the equivalent number of trees we have saved in reducing our carbon footprint and emissions with that.
Right. Reliability was the main thing I was concerned with. Is it,
yes, sir.
Reliable?
Absolutely. And we have one or two glitches with the lighting that's underneath, and we have excellent lighting with these solar arrays over the parking lots. But that's another benefit that we receive when we build these arrays is it's their array, it's their equipment, so the maintenance is theirs. We call them, they come right out, they get everything fixed, and they are extremely efficient with maintenance because they want it to be able to put out as much as possible so that they can sell as much solar energy as possible. But it's been extremely reliable. Everything about it has. It's been a great program.
Good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Chair.
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
I want to ask Rob a couple of questions. At the facility, the South Recreation location, is it going to be on that building that's out there?
Yes, ma'am. It'll be on the rooftop.
Not going to be over the parking lot?
No, ma'am.
Just on the rooftop. And when are we expecting these two, if we approve these two projects, when are we expecting these to be completed?
Cherry Street Energies is ready to order. They got the design, they got everything ready to go. We know the array size. They would have to order the equipment, order the materials, installation. They move pretty quickly with it. They once they acquire the equipment, within just a few months, they can have it erected and tied in. Then we have to also work directly with Georgia Power, getting their approvals and make sure that we have to do what they call a witness test to make sure that the array is providing power for the facility. But they also ramp down if the facility is not using the amount of consumption rate that the solar panels are able to put out, so that they don't backfeed on the grid. So that's what the witness test is for. But I'm looking at probably about a month to require material and a month or two to install.
So we'll have them in place by the end of the summer, perhaps?
I think so. I hope so. We
Okay.
hope to.
All right, is there any possibility that we would consider the parking lot out there at the recreation facility? That's a big space too.
We thought about that, and because of all the changes and whatnot, once we occupy that real estate, we can't use it for anything else for 20 years, because we have a 20-year contract with them for the array once they invest in the installation and equipment.
Okay.
So that's the reason we chose to go with the rooftop out there, because there's still so much going on with recreation out there and opportunities for additional recreation out there.
Okay, thank you.
Move to approve.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Rob, let me ask you one other question on, can you hear me, Rob?
Yes, sir.
So the solar really works in concert with electricity. Does it work whereby it's the main source and electricity is the backup, or how exactly does that work?
As long as the solar array is producing solar power, we are using that energy first. So it offsets the usage of the Georgia Power traditional power, and thereby it reduces the monthly billing because we're buying it at a lower rate.
Gotcha. Okay. Any other questions for Rob? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Commissioner Wynn, we appreciate your motion, but you're not on the committee. Could we have someone on the committee make the motion?
Sorry, you know how
Janice, I made the motion.
All right, Commissioner Schlesinger made the motion.
Second.
Watkins. We got a second from Commissioner Watkins.
Mm-hmm.
So we have a first and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, same sign. The motion carries. Rob, thank you for all your good work on this, and it's going to be a good project, and it's going to save us money, and we're going to be more efficient. So thank you so much.
Thank you all. We appreciate your support.
Yes, sir. That's everything we have for facilities. Unless somebody's got something else, we are hereby adjourned.
Thank you very much, Chairman Jones. Next committee, Operations and Finance, and members of the Operations and Finance Committee are Chairman Watkins, Vice Chairman Schlesinger, Commissioner Bivens, Commissioner Lucas, and Commissioner Shepard round out that committee. So Chairman Watkins, can I call on you to conduct your meeting, sir?
Yes, sir. Thank you. And prior to the start, if it's okay with everybody, I have no objection. I wanted to move the hazard pay discussion to right after our approval of the minutes. If there's no objection, do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Thank you. All in favor of the minutes?
Aye.
I need a second. I have a motion and second for approval of the minutes. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Our next agenda item is a discussion on hazard pay. For the last week or so, me and Attorney McNeil have been, and primarily Attorney McNeil have been working on researching what is hazard pay and how would it, or if it could affect Macon-Bibb County employees. I think most of us as commissioners have heard the question, seen the question. I believe our sheriff, Dave, just actually wrote us a letter also asking to research this idea. I'll share with you a little bit of what I've discovered, and if hopefully Michael McNeil can chime in as well to provide some clarity. The purpose of hazard pay is primarily to aid first line employees who have been unable to adjust their work schedules or their work habits to avoid or limit their exposure to the harm of the virus. Right now, Macon-Bibb County has 1,600 full-time employees. Most places, including Atlanta and Savannah, have limited their hazard pay program to what they call frontline employees, those people who are in direct contact. So all of our public safety workers, the sheriff, the fire, but also including janitors, the Board of Elections, the Solid Waste Department, the Tax Commissioner, along with others. And using that definition, it would be about 1,100 employees or departments that could qualify for such a program. And it seems as though other areas, it seems as though the cost is either $400 per month or $2.30 per hour of working in the exposed condition. And they set up exclusions. I want to commend the mayor and Dr. Moffitt for what they've already done for our employees. You know, we've established some alternate work schedules, work from home. And so you have employees that are working or telecommuting and doing other things that they've seen no impact to their pay, but they've been able to not be exposed to the virus because they've been at home or their exposure has been severely limited and their pay hasn't been impacted. But when we think about some of our correctional officers, they're still working the same schedule, still doing the same duties, and they just can't avoid their contact with the inmates, or the business license folks can avoid their contact with our citizens. Did I leave anything out, Michael?
I think that about covers our discussion that we've had. I've looked at a number of other jurisdictions, and you know, it kind of runs the full spectrum from you know, giving one-time like flat payment, to giving an hourly boost, to giving like a weekly or monthly boost, to not doing anything, to furloughing and doing pay cuts on the other side. So it's kind of running the whole gamut of what's going on as far as employee pay in response to this. But the hazard pay is sort of a way to recognize and thank employees for putting themselves on the line.
Yeah. And just to, yeah, go ahead.
What are some examples of some amounts that some cities have done, hourly or flat rate, flat amount, or what are?
I have some notes, but Michael, you can answer that more in depth.
Yeah, the ones that I found, Atlanta identified certain employees as frontline employees and is giving them $500 a month as hazard pay. For Savannah, I believe it was $100 a week, which works out to about $400 a month. And City of Carrollton gave an hourly bonus. I believe it was $2 an hour to all their frontline employees. And so the $2 an hour times 170 hours works out to about $350, $340 a month. And then some private businesses, I've seen amounts as high as $1,000 or $1,200 as a flat payment. And then hourly increases in the $1 to $3 an hour range. And then, like I've said, some places are doing cuts or furloughs the other way too. So it just depends on the individual entities.
Yeah, it just looks like we've got to look and see how much it's going to cost us as far as a city and county going through this virus. And we're not finished with that yet. And how much it's costing us. And then we got to see whether we've got the money, because we don't want to promise someone something and then we not have the money to actually follow through on it. So I would like for us to take a look at what obligations we have that are a result of this virus and employees being off, and just what impact it's had on our budget before we come up with a specific number or anything. I think we would be smart, because the worst thing we can do is to promise people something and then we not be able to do. We all want to do something for our first responders. We want to make sure that they know we appreciate them. But then you got to identify who's essential, who has been out there, Are you just talking about public safety? Are you talking about public works? What departments are you talking about? And then what's the amount that we can afford? So I think there are 2 or 3 steps we've got to take before we can even come up with a figure. That's my thinking on it. I don't know what anybody else feels, but that's how I feel.
Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Can I
Commissioner,
see
Commissioner Lucas mentioned some of the things. I have a list of 4 hows. How many people will be exposed? You said 1,100 out of the 1,600 approximately, but I still want to know how many of those 1,100 really would be exposed, like desk workers, people that stay inside. I want to know how much it's going to cost us. You said several different versions, how long we're going to have to do this, and how do we, biggest question is how are we going to pay for it? I want to look at Tax Commissioner Wade McCord. He's right there. Turn around. And I wanted to ask you, are you doing anything, for example, your office was mentioned as one of the places that might have this pay. What is your office doing with your personnel? Just a question.
Right. So once the governor's order came out, the executive order came out with the in-office distancing, I had to change a little bit of my workspaces around a little bit to comply with that. But our drive-throughs are open 5 days a week. We actively taking care of taxpayers through the drive-through, and I've got a plan, the time right to reopen the lot at a level to which we can build upon. Like that dreams move, you build it, they will come. I can tell you by looking at my drive-through open, they're going to come. So I have to be very deliberate in reopening the lobby, which will have constant face-to-face contact with taxpayers. My employees are constantly doing everything by mail, which of course is contagion as well. But that's what we're doing right now. Thank you for asking.
Thank you. I know that your employees are behind a glass enclosure, if you will. So I just wondered what, nothing had changed with that. They're still working, but they're working through the drive-through right now. Is that correct?
And even through the glass, we still have to transfer documents back and forth, and that's a pathway, I'm assuming, is what I've been told.
Okay. So we need to, thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. We need to look at, as we said, how many are really going to be affected by this. If you have 1,100 potential, how many really, how much those people will really cost, how long we're going to do this for them, because this virus thing can go on forever. And do we have the money? That's the biggest thing. Do we have the money? We have really got a lot to talk about before we do anything with this.
Thank you, Commissioner Tillman, and I have Julie Moore from the mayor's office.
Unmute. Unmute.
They're muting us down there.
If y'all, Rachel, can y'all hear me okay now? We good?
Yeah.
Okay. What I wanted to chime in and say is just a reminder that I think in times like this, we have to take care of all our employees, and the word all. Last year, we gave our employees, we figured out a way to give everybody a Christmas bonus, $750 to at least $1,000. I kind of don't like dealing with this subject because it always pit our employees against each other, especially our fire department and our sheriff department, as to who has the more dangerous job. And as I listen to Commissioner Watkins and Attorney McNeil, you know, I can make that same argument for public works or solid waste. I could remind everybody, the guy who was last year killed, and those that have been hit by cars, paralyzed, those that have been bit by dogs and pick up our hazardous, most hazardous material. So we have to be cautious and careful when we say we want to give somebody hazard pay, because everybody's job in COVID and dealing with the public is at a risk. everybody who's dealing directly with the public is at a risk. And Commissioner Wynn mentioned the tax assessor. You know, before COVID, the beauty of their office is they all work from behind the glass anyway. And so, you know, he's already has that set up in place. And so just how do we do it the way we do it? Because, you know, now Macon-Bibb being the, in some areas in public safety, the 4th largest municipality, most folks look to us, but now we find ourselves looking at what others did. And so how do we arrive at this, and how do you make the case for public safety versus, you know, those who's been working down there in the office every day since COVID, who's down there in the public every day, trying to deal with employees. So we just have to be fair about the process. And we really need to stop singling out departments and figure out a way how we can compensate everybody. I would like to see, you know, or hear from the sheriff as to how we can do it, because we know that, you know, the sheriff has at least $1 million or maybe less in pay that he can hire folks, and he can give bonuses and overtime and all of that thing. And I don't want it to seem like we're not for this, or we don't want to support it, because we all may have family, friends, and what have you that work on the fire department and in law enforcement. But when we do things like this, we just have to try to include employees of all, especially in COVID, because we're all at risk. I thought personally, when we came up with the testing site, usually commissioners, I mean, are the guinea pigs, and we encourage folks to do the flu shot first, but nobody's called and said, come on, commissioners, and take your COVID-19 testing first. And so, you know, but yet we're here to make these decisions. So I just want to say, let's be cautious, and let's figure out a way, how do we do it for all? And how do you differentiate one department over another? And I do understand the importance of our law enforcement and our sheriff department, along with Chief Riggins and his men do. The caller earlier alluded to, you know, 4 firefighters falling through a floor. You know, that was terrible. And Stafford, I know, I think he's still recovering from that. And so we just have to be mindful when we do that. And so sometimes I don't know what is it that we're trying to do when we come up with that, because we gave everybody $1,000 bonus. If we can do it, the budget is there, let's do it, but let's try to just include more folks. Thank you.
All right, and just as a financial footnote, the $1,000 Christmas bonus that we did last year for all employees, y'all remember that number ended up being about $2.3 million worth of cost. That was a one-time pay of $1,000 for all of our full-time employees. We allocated about $2.3 million for that. If we were to go with the limited number of employees, the 1,100 number, and 1,100 employees times 400 per month, that's going to be about $440,000 for 1 month. If we did it for 3 months, it'd be $1.3 million. So that's just a little bit of the cost range. And I believe Ms. Moore wanted to speak next.
All right, muted or unmuted?
Unmuted.
Okay.
Okay, great. As we're having budget conversations right now with our departments, I just wanted to update you on some of the things that we are saying to the department heads as we try to put together a budget in these very uncertain times. We do not really know the actual impact to revenues at this point. As you know, sales tax is 30 days behind. So what we receive the end of this month is really March sales tax. And we know that April is really when everybody stayed home. We know that people are probably not out buying cars, so TAVIT's going to take a hit. We anticipate that hotel motel is going to be drastically down. We have been told that the March occupancy rate was about 45% in our hotels, but we also know that there were, that should have been a bigger month for us. This also has a pretty long tail on it. People are not jumping out and saying they're ready to get back in the flow of things. We've had cancellations at the Centerplex. Our usual visits from the Jehovah Witness group in early July, as they've already canceled. So we know it's going to take a while for things to get back on track, and we just don't really have a number to base that on at this moment. We are going to be on a call with other municipalities around the state with the Georgia Department of Revenue later in the week, and we hope they'll be able to give us a snapshot of what some of those numbers might look like. But I think we have to be cautious and prepared that this does not look exactly the same as it did last year, and that we don't know when it's going to return to normal. If this virus is back in the fall with some power and begins shutting things down again, we kind of have to be prepared for those scenarios, and how we want to not only make sure that we are taking care of our employees and keeping them safe, but keeping them employed. From the U.S. Conference of Mayors, we received an email that said they've done a survey across the United States and anticipate that revenues could be anywhere from 17% to 27% reduced. That's long-term. We hope we're not at that point. We hope the tax structures are different in some of those places. But they also noted for us that in Dayton, Ohio, they've already furloughed 470 employees. In Cincinnati, they've already furloughed 1,700 employees. And in LA, they've already borrowed $70 million from their reserve. And they have asked that all civilian workers take a 26-day pay reduction. So there are some people who are really feeling those numbers a little bit sooner than we can even see our numbers. So I think we are trying to come up with a very conservative budget and understand that that presentation to you is important, that we're going to try to keep everything as close to 2020 as we can just to get started. And then we will come back and ideally do a supplemental to implement a pay scale. But we have to be realistic and know that we may end up having to come back and make further reductions. So I think that part of the conversation should include that we do value our employees, and we have tried to be very good about alternative work schedules and teleworking options. And it does mean that there is a difference in what folks are doing out in public and contacting with people, and some who may not. So if you start looking at those numbers, you have about 425 people in the sheriff's office that are in the jail, court security, colonels, certified deputies, but you have another 66 who are admin. Some of those may have teleworked, some of them may have an alternative work schedule. Fire departments, another 366 folks who are privates or sergeants or captains or battalions. You have about 5 admin staff with them as well. But then, you know, you've got EMA out there every day. We have the coroner out there every day. You've got E911 on the phones. You have folks with solid waste and the tax commissioner's office and the board of elections who are having contact with the public. And I think that it will become a bit of a challenge to figure out how to piecemeal all of that together right now, when we're really concentrating on coming up with a budget that starts July 1, that doesn't include a tax increase, because we don't know what this means for the community at large, even in the fall. And if people are without work and schedules have changed, what does that mean for us in property tax collection? We have to be thinking through all of those items as we look forward to the FY21. So just know that that's the conversation that we're having with departments at this time. And we feel like we've done what we could within the constraints of telework options and FMLA options and alternative work schedules. And we hope that that's been well received by our employees.
Thank you for that. And I understand what you're saying towards preparation, but part of me says preparation isn't us trying to figure out how much money we're going to have next month, but remind me, how much cash do we have today? Our reserve funds, because that's the purpose of those fund balances and reserves. and we are in the middle of a crisis. And I would assume that we would pay out any employee payouts from our reserves that we build up. So how much cash does Macon-Bibb County have today?
I don't have that number in front of me, and I'd rather Christy give that number to you, but it is a healthy reserve at the moment, and that's through hard work and folks who have been waiting for a pay scale adjustment. And I think there are a number of people who would prefer to see a long-term pay adjustment as opposed to a one-time. And saving for that is what we've been trying to do, is to make sure.
But we don't save for a one-time pay adjustment. That is when we talk about our operational revenues and expenses, because we're paying for that on an annual basis. This is we're talking about a one-time thing. That's a reserve conversation. But for an annual, we want to make sure our annual budget, and I'll yield because we have other conversations to do today. But,
okay.
You also have Commissioner, other folks trying to chime in on your subject.
Yeah, Commissioner Jones.
Yes, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Certainly we all value and treasure our employees. They mean the world to us. They mean the world to this community. And you know, when I think back over, what I don't want to do is jeopardize or impact the pay scale increase. We promised that. We need to proceed forward with that. I don't want to negatively impact that with something we might do today. You know, thinking back over since 2014 when we began, I can't think of a time that we've turned down law enforcement. We've not turned down firefighters. We've not turned down emergency management. We've not turned down the courts. We've all supported them fully 100% of the time to my memory. But again, we treasure and appreciate them. I don't want to negatively impact what we can do for them with a long-term pay increase. And I think Julie's counsel is wise. We need to be very cautious. And I'm not in favor of doing anything at this time. I certainly want to do everything we can to keep all employees and keep them employed. We don't want to get in the boat of what other communities have done, but we're still in uncertain and uncharted waters. We don't know what the future is going to bring. Nobody on the planet Earth does. So we need to proceed cautiously, and I think we need to proceed. The mayor says his budget will include the pay increase, and I'm all for that. I think that's what we need to do. We need to be cautious at this point. Thank you.
Comments, others?
Mr. Chairman.
I can't see you, but go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, can you hear me?
Davis?
Can you hear me, Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, if I might chime in just a minute, I've sort of got this whole ball rolling here, and I think that what we ought to do, and I appreciate the commission even discussing this idea, but in my view, I think it's a sort of a two-step process. The idea of hazardous duty pay, and we've like Mr. McNeil and others, we've done a sort of a survey across the state, and it does run the gamut. Some pay public safety, fire, some include the public works, the others, and it runs the gamut also as to how much. Atlanta PD is $500 a month. Some of them, Lake City PD is $2 more an hour. Monroe County Sheriff's Office is $5 more an hour for patrol and corrections deputies. So we can see it runs the gamut. So I wouldn't suggest right now that we even institute any type of hazardous pay policy throughout county government. We're not really looking at it specifically for the sheriff's office. That may be something that we develop going forward. During this time, and Commissioner Tillman, Mayor Pro Tem Tillman made a good point, every one of us, everybody in county government in this unprecedented time has had some kind of risk or some kind of effect. So if we do anything, maybe look at something one time for the county. If we want to look at those at the front lines, those 1,100 folks we talked about, or whatever, but let that be sort of a standalone in relation to this COVID-19 situation, with a longer term view of maybe creating some type of hazardous duty pay, because there's so many different things. What constitutes hazardous duty? going out for a tornado and cutting down a tree off the side of the road, is that hazardous duty? So there's going to have to take a lot of study. And also an important part of that from my belief is the pay scale, because there are some entities, some agencies that we contacted, they're like, well, we don't need to give extra money. We're already very, very competitive or paying more than our surrounding areas. So we felt like we didn't really need to do hazardous duty pay for this sort of situation. And some of them are given like an extra day off and sometimes like that. And Dr. Moffitt and I have had that discussion, and all of that's on the table. So I think this is to get the if there's any funds available or any type of mechanism available to help those for this particular situation, and then have a longer term look, maybe when things calm down, at hazardous pay, if even we need to institute that, if we get a very robust pay scale that really pays our employees what they deserve and pays them more comparable than what we have around here. So I think it's a two-step process in this.
Yeah, I like that. And if I may, I would like to move forward in implementing a process like that, what the sheriff said, because I think we do need to get some stuff in place for future disasters such as storms and things of that nature. So I just think we need to start putting things in place so we can implement and say, hey, for this particular job item, it causes for hazardous pay at this time. So I support that, and I think and hope that we can begin to, whether it's an ad hoc committee or Commissioner Watkins, your committee, to begin, and let's do that. I appreciate that. I like that.
Further comments from the committee or board?
If I might, Mr. Chairman, if I might add one more thing. I agree with most of the commissioners and everything. That pay scale is, to me, is the most important aspect of this. That is, bar none, the most important aspect of that. And if we come out of this pay scale study with a salary that is comparable or even better than what we see around here, that lessens the sting of maybe not getting a big hazard pay or hazard compensation if we know that we're going to be very competitive for the long run, because that pay scale is going to help pay people for a much longer time than any hazardous situation that may come up. So
I got a question for the attorney when you finish. Attorney Gruber and Mr. Mayor, I'm sure that the federal government is going to offer and give us something, sort of like the storms and things that we've dealt with. Can we go ahead and work on and start looking at a percentage that would go toward hazardous pay based on the funding that we receive from the federal government? Because I think at some point we will receive some funding from the federal government. And right now, what is it we need to start looking at, and Julie can start looking at things that have affected us, such as the tax revenue. But I think we need to at least designate maybe a anywhere from 10 to 30% toward the hazardous pay that the federal government put down. And my question again is, are y'all in communications with the federal government receiving some funding, because folks are receiving the stimulus paychecks and some SBA payments? And so I just cannot, leave out the fact that I know that the federal government is going to help us as far as municipalities. So,
well, at this point, Commissioner Tillman, there's been no official communication to that regard. There has been the organizations around the state that I and several staff members are involved in. That conversation is out there. It was not included in the last round of federal government payouts for the PPE and things, not for the payroll protection program and things like that. But we are document all expenses that we are incurring during this pandemic, just in case that there's a reimbursement like FEMA does for we're trying to keep records. So if that does happen, we will have that for reimbursement. But at this time, we've not received any official or really unofficial process or words that the federal government is going to be giving local governments any funds during this crisis.
I just wanted to follow up on that. Like you said, usually that's a reimbursement for fees that the government has incurred. And if I'm understanding correctly, when it comes to compensation, that's not something we can do retroactively, right?
Well, Mr. Chairman, can I chime in?
Please.
All right. I would not recommend at this juncture until we know more what the federal government's going to do with respect to local governments to try to tie in any hazard pay resolution or ordinance to that, because it's a political process. You don't know what you get at the end of it. You don't know what kind of strings are going to be attached to any relief you may or may not get. The PPP program, for example, has a number of different applications to it that people applied for it, and then it changed in midstream, and now some people are regretting that they actually applied for it. So my recommendation with respect to any local or municipal relief that might come, which we don't know if it's going to come, but let's assume it does, is you wait till you see what it is, because there's going to be strings. I know that. I don't know what they're going to be, but if they do pass it, they're going to be different tranches you can spend the money on and what you can't. And I would recommend that we not proceed with any kind of action until you know what that's going to be. I don't know how I would even define how to do that until we know what the federal government's going to do.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Allen.
Mr. Chairman, I was in law enforcement and fire department for over 30 plus years. We all have hazardous.
God, can you mute, please?
You hear me?
Yeah, Commissioner Shepard,
Okay.
Could you please mute?
Excuse me?
Commissioner Shepard, could you mute? Go ahead, Commissioner.
What I hit the mute.
You got it.
My question is that, the hazardous pay, a lot of people would deserve hazardous pay. We don't know exactly at this time what we're dealing with hazardous pay. We do know that the people that work for us, our employees or citizens, they want a pay scale. I would hope that if we were going to do anything for our employees, we don't just handpick one or two. We do know that during the storm last several weeks, we've had Public Works out. We've had all these other divisions out working. Why couldn't we just, look at giving them a day off? Because some of them have got other positions they can go working, especially deputy sheriffs and firefighters, and make money too doing that. But give them a day off for that. And then think about, the blood drive that they're needing right now is just unbelievable. If they go give blood, give them a half a day off. Then when we get ready to sit down to do the budget, and that's one thing I was pushing the budget with the mayor a while ago, that's our job. We're the ones supposed to be doing the budget. We sit down with the committee, with the commissioners, with the staff, and work out a pay plan, put it in place, and take care of our employees. By that time, we'll know how much money we're dealing with that's coming in through the taxes and what the base we're going to be working off of. I know we have about $17 million in fund balance. We can't keep taking that away. Now, when we gave the $1,000 to all full-time employees, we did it not knowing that we were going to have an epidemic. We've got a major epidemic ahead of us. A lot of people are working from home, but my main concern is we got to do a little bit for the employees, but they're more concerned about that pay scale. I know if I was still a firefighter, and I've talked to a lot of firefighters, I've talked to a lot of deputies, they want to be able to be compensated in the long run, not in the short run. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Further comments, questions from the committee? Members? There being none, I want to move on to item 2A on our agenda. And it is a change to the attorney's organizational chart. Is a resolution to amend the MBC Attorney's Office organizational chart for the purpose of adding a new assistant county attorney for litigation and procurement positions and a new paralegal position. Do I have a motion? Who's discussing? I'm sorry.
Larry
I'll take it. Michael will take it.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I'm going to put a short PowerPoint presentation up on the screen for y'all. So basically, we're looking at two new positions for the county attorney's office. The first one is a litigation and procurement attorney. That person will be involved in the risk management process from the time that claims come into the county, assisting with reviewing claim payments, anti-litem notices and lawsuits that come in. We are looking at bringing some of our litigation in-house, and that's the goal of this, is to save some outside counsel expenses and to give ourselves a little more flexibility and improve the quality of our work product by bringing certain cases in-house. Anything that's complex, anything that's large, federal type lawsuits, anything like that, we're going to continue to assign outside counsel. Any kind of specialty areas of law, we've used specialty counsel in recent years for pension matters, for the EPA, stormwater matters, for the airport. We have different specialty counsel. All of that will continue as normal. But I'm looking at having this person do about a half-time litigation caseload, which when I was in private practice, a full-time caseload was 30 to 40 cases or so at a time. And so this person would maintain roughly 15 cases or so at a time. The cases that they would keep would be the minor or simple, like tort or contract claims that we get, things like car accidents or slip and fall cases, or minor contract disputes with vendors, things like that. A lot of times those cases, we refer to outside counsel. The outside counsel that we use does a fantastic job of representing the county and defending us in these cases. But ultimately, the cases, the settlement value for those cases ends up being $5,000, $10,000, $15,000, and because of the value of those cases, it can often cost more in litigation expenses to defend the lawsuit than it does just to pay the claim. And so, some of this is to offset some of those costs and shift that into a fixed cost of a salary and benefits for an employee. The other component of this job, as y'all know, Chauncey Wilmore left employment with the county at the end of last year. He worked as a contracting consultant for a few months, but that's now expired as well. And so the attorney's office and the finance department are looking at splitting up some of his former job duties. And so the attorney's office would take basically anything that requires commission approval, anything that requires competitive solicitation, like a bid or proposal, or anything that involves an exception to the competitive solicitation process, like if we're using sole source or we're using state contract or something like that, then the attorney's office will review that and make sure that's applicable. So this person would review all procurement requests that are over $10,000 or otherwise fall under one of those categories. And will fully manage the bid and proposal process. They'll draft the invitation for bids or draft the request for proposals. They'll get it published. They'll conduct the pre-bid meetings. They'll channel questions from the vendor applicants to make sure that they get answered appropriately, manage the whole process from start to finish to make sure that it's fair, to make sure that any credits for things like disadvantaged business entities or local business preferences or anything like that are fairly and accurately applied, and ultimately make sure that the award is one that has a reduced risk of being challenged or no risk of being challenged. And then as kind of a final duty, it says on here, they'll assist with any other legal duties as needed. So if there isn't a situation where all the other attorneys are occupied, we'll have one more backup person. The paralegal position goes mostly along with the litigation component, but both of these sets of duties, litigation and procurement, come with a lot of organizational and record keeping obligations. And so this person will manage all the correspondence and documents that are associated with these lawsuits that we would be taking on, maintain all of our files, assist with investigations. That may include things like talking to employees, talking to witnesses, things like that, helping to find records that are available. There may be some drafting involved, especially routine things like a leave of absence forms or notices that you have to give to the court for different types of things, and that would all be under the supervision of the litigation attorney. And then on the procurement side, they can assist with getting price quotes, getting answers to bidder questions, and things like that. There's a lot of behind the scenes work that goes on with the procurement process, and sometimes a department may know, for example, I want to buy a piece of equipment. I want to buy a tractor or a mower or something like that, but I don't necessarily know what the pricing is right now for the features that I'm looking for. So see what you can find, and we could take that to the state contract vendors or take it to some of our cooperative purchasing partners and help find what's on the market and what prices can be out there. So next, I just want to give a quick overview of the litigation process, just to give a sense, if you're not familiar with everything that's involved when we assign a case to outside counsel. And this is assuming it's already gone through review by our risk management, and either we've declined to pay because of, we believe it's sovereign immunity or something like that, or they just didn't accept the amount that we offered to pay. And so sometimes that leads to a lawsuit. So you get a complaint, you've got to review it, you've got to investigate internally, what evidence do we have relating to the case, speak to witnesses, there's legal research involved, and you've got to file an answer. All of that is pretty heavy lifting just right when a case comes in. Sometimes there are some motions that go along with that add to that workload. After the answer, there's a 6-month discovery period where the two sides can make each other answer questions and turn over evidence and that kind of thing. And so that can be very time consuming as far as gathering records and finding answers to questions that the other side has asked, and then also thinking of what evidence and questions you need to ask of the plaintiff and getting their information and reviewing it. If we take a deposition, that could easily take a half a day or a whole day of attorney time in the deposition room. And so those costs can add up pretty quickly. There might be some other motions as well. If they don't want to cooperate with discovery, or, if there's other issues that come up, that adds to the workload. And then usually the process leads to a summary judgment. After discovery, one or both sides will move for summary judgment. Typically, it's the defendants, which is usually us, that move for summary judgment. And if we win, the case is over. We don't owe anything to the plaintiff, but we've incurred legal fees all along the way. If we don't win summary judgment, then that's a lot of times when our outside counsel will come and they'll confer with the commission and they'll say, we went through summary judgment. We had these defenses. The judge went the other way. Now we've got to talk about settlement, or we've got to go to trial. And a lot of times the county has settled these cases rather than going to trial because it's more certain to settle. You don't necessarily know what a jury's going to do. But over the course of a case getting to summary judgment stage, it's 9 months to a year roughly on average, and it can cost $10,000 to $25,000 per case in legal fees. And so as I mentioned, if the claim is worth less than $25,000, it means that you're paying more in legal fees than the cost of the claim itself. And if you lose on summary judgment and you have to pay to settle, then you're paying both. You're paying the legal fees and the settlement costs. And so it can add up quickly. So what we're looking at for the procurement process, and so this is, it's kind of two sides of the job, but I think that they can both be, they're both about a half-time job worth of duties. And so I think this will go very well. But for the procurement side, a department enters a requisition. It comes to legal if it's one of those categories that I mentioned earlier. We're going to have the attorney review the requisition, obtain any quotes that are needed, try and figure out a budget if that hasn't been done already, and figure out what are the available options. Does this have to be bid out? Can it go through state contract? Do we have an existing contract that we can just renew or amend that would be appropriate for this? If there is a solicitation, you've got an attorney drafting and publishing that solicitation, that bid or request for proposals. And we've had a couple of issues come up in the past where, for example, we'll get through a bid process and then the contract will come over to legal to draft, and we'll mention to the bidder, well, hey, you need to have this certain kind of insurance. And they say, well, that wasn't in the proposal. And if you want me to get that insurance policy, it's going to add $10,000 to the price or something like that. And it doesn't happen a lot of the time, but it does happen every once in a while. Well, then we have to go back and we say, okay, well, can we afford to add $10,000 to this price? This isn't quite what we expected when we selected this bidder as the winning bidder. What do we do from here? And so that helps prevent some of those problems by having an attorney on the front end to check for those details and make sure that that's all accurate. And then they'll manage the entire competitive process to make sure it's done fairly and in compliance with the law. And so lastly, the cost justification for the paralegal and the attorney, I estimate about $160,000 for salary and benefits combined. That's roughly $120 to $125 for salary, and then 35 or 40 for benefits on top of that. The cost savings, I'm trying to be conservative here, but if it's 10 cases a year and it's $10,000 per case, that'd be about $100,000 in cost savings from our outside counsel budget, which at the rates that our outside counsel typically charge is going to equal about 500 to 600 hours of casework a year. It's very conceivable that it could exceed that, but it is going to take a little bit of time to ramp up. I'm not looking to take any cases away from any outside counsel that we've already hired. And so it will be a matter of, waiting for some new lawsuits to come in, which we get a couple every month or so, but waiting for those to come in and assigning them as appropriate to in-house counsel. Some years we just have a lot of lawsuits going on, and so that increases our legal fees. So using this in-house counsel allows for some flexibility in that regard, where we can increase or decrease the number of cases that our in-house counsel is handling to kind of offset some of these risks of having extra high legal fees just by virtue of having a lot of lawsuits. They don't necessarily have to be big or complex, but every one requires the same amount of work as a baseline, and so it adds up pretty quickly. Another big benefit of this is right now we don't take any cases to trial. And so the plaintiff's bar knows if you can get through summary judgment, you're going to get something. You're going to get some sort of settlement payment because the county doesn't go to trial. But if we can start taking some cases to trial, and not a lot, but maybe one or two a year, we start taking a couple of select cases to trial, that almost takes away that guarantee where if you're a plaintiff's attorney and you're looking at a case against the county and you say, do I want to take this case or not? Well, if you know, hey, all I have to do is get through summary judgment, I'm going to get at least something as a paycheck, you might be more likely to take a case. Whereas if you say, well, the county's starting to take cases to trial, and if they win, I don't get anything. And I've done a whole year or year and a half's worth of work and I don't get anything. That might, figure into their calculation and help defend some of our claim costs as well. And as I mentioned, reduce risk of bid challenges or legal issues with bids. And the other thing that this does is, we have very skilled outside counsel that we use, and they're helping us with all manner of highly complex, highly technical matters. And sometimes it feels like it's a waste of their talent to send them a $5,000, slip and fall case or car accident case or something like that. And so, to the extent that we want to call in the big guns when we need the big guns, they would be more available to jump in and respond if there's, some major lawsuit that comes in that requires, like the SEC matter we had a few years ago that required all hands on deck for several months at a time. They don't need to be worrying about things like a minor car accident case. We can take care of that and, leave our big guns to handle that kind of stuff. So that's my presentation. And I think it's a lot of promise for the future of the department. And I appreciate any questions that you have.
Questions from the committee?
Let me add something. Michael and I have discussed this, and right now, and this is, I think Commissioner Lucas had asked for some of this information. We have about 55 lawsuits pending, and we get them about two. We average 1 or 2 a month coming in. We have a lot more claims than that, and so I do think over time, there's you're going to have outside counsel. That's just every state and local government does. You're the size where you're going to get legal issues that face you all the time, just like any other big business with a lot of employees. So you have to have that. You can't have a totally in-house department, but this would allow some savings on outside counsel fees related to smaller claims, like Michael's saying. But a big benefit to me is the procurement part as well, which is on more complex procurement matters, getting an attorney involved earlier in the process will be a quality issue that will improve the quality of not only the negotiations on complex procurement matters, but also it will reduce the risk of some problem coming up by the time it usually gets to the county attorney's office. So it's not just a cost saving, it's a quality of deal, which in the long run is actually more valuable to the county. So those are my 2 observations.
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
Listening to Michael, what he said makes a lot of sense, and I think we should at least give some consideration to making those adjustments.
Sir, I don't disagree. Further comments from the committee?
Yeah, just a quick question. Is this something that would start immediately, or are we going to wait till the beginning of the new budget year to do this?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make the recommendation that we do this prior to the budget because of the procurement issue. We're still trying to, we tried to hire somebody for Chauncey. That did not work out. We did not get quality applicants. And so we kind of hybrid this situation with the attorney's office, and this solution kind of presented itself. And Michael and Duke has done a good job in tailoring it. We are updating the SOP for procurement, and this would fit right in line with what we're doing today. So we recommend that we go ahead and do this prior to the budget.
And I'm understanding you correctly, this replaces the current, you would not need a procurement director? This replaces that?
Correct. We would not need a procurement director, but in the upcoming budget, we are going to be adding a buyer 3 position, which is a lower rated position because of if this streamlines, we know that's going to cost more work in the purchasing side. So we will be adding a buyer 3 position in the upcoming budget.
And so the staff that's currently in purchasing will be directed by the attorney's office, or?
No, purchasing will stay with the finance director, and procurement.
So who will be in charge of purchasing?
The finance director.
Or just a direct line?
Correct. Well, finance director, and then I believe they have Karen who supervises the 2 buyer positions.
Okay.
Mr. Chair.
Question, Commissioner Jones?
Yes, sir. I like the concept going back to 2012 and 2013 when I used to sit in all those commission meetings with Commissioner Joe Allen and Commissioner Burt Bivens III down there. I've been an advocate of this for a long time. I especially like, as Duke mentioned, I think it will be very beneficial to the procurement process. They need contractual knowledge in that department. So I think that's a real advantage. And I also like Michael's comment about we should take some appropriate cases to court. And if a plaintiff's lawyer knows in advance we're not going to court, then they're going to try to take advantage of us. And I also agree we've had excellent outside counsel. And I think we'll continue to have that on cases where needed. But I really like the concept and I'm fully in favor of it. Thank you.
Commissioner Allen?
Chairman, I've been involved with that over the years at the old government, and it really worked well, as Mallory has just said, and I am totally 100% in favor of it.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
A motion for approval. I hear a second. Further comments, questions, or concerns? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Same sign. There being none.
Can I ask one question? The monies that we have approved for outside counsel, how is that gonna be impacted? I mean, we've already approved a lot of money for outside counsel, and this is gonna kind of take the place of some of that. How are we gonna?
Yeah, Commissioner Lucas, going forward, as these cases come in that fit this category Michael's talking about, you know, if you got a $10,000 car wreck case, I'm making that up. Any outside counsel, us, Adams, you know, Virgil Adams' office, whoever you normally handles the outside counsel stuff, there's no way to handle that case efficiently enough where the attorneys are not going to be what they are. So on those types of cases coming in, the idea would be if we have this person in-house, we would assign it to that person. There's still plenty of work that has to be done by outside counsel, but it would stabilize, or at least on those smaller claim cases, give you a cap on outside counsel fees related to those. So it's really going forward, you know, as far as
the change.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
And we're not taking any cases away from anybody. I mean, speaking personally, I still want to represent the county as appropriate, and I know our outside counsel does. And there's going to be plenty we have to do. It's just really that narrow group of cases that right now you can't handle efficiently for too small.
Okay.
If we get enough of those where it's part-time.
There will be a savings in that outside counsel line. So
correct.
Okay.
Yeah, line was roughly 280,000 last year, so we should see some reduction from that 280 in the fiscal 21.
If I can add to that, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. McNeil?
Yes, sir. Thank you. One other point that I want to make is with outside counsel, there is a lot of variation from year to year that, you know, I've noticed just doing the budget. So we unfortunately, we can't predict if there's something like the SEC lawsuit that happened a few years ago that came in, and that one case alone cost several $100,000 in outside counsel fees. You know, so we can't say the overall will necessarily be less because of that risk. But as far as it relates to kind of these smaller claims, at least in isolation, there'll almost definitely be a notable savings there.
Yeah,
that's right.
All right, that item is concluded. The next item on our agenda is Section 3, Supplemental Appropriations and Transfers. Item A is an ordinance to approve a supplemental appropriations from fund balance in the amount of $92,960 to the Tax Commissioner's Office, small equipment and improvements and capital improvements line item to provide for the purchase of state-required scanners, and for equipment and construction costs related to the transfer of business and alcohol licensing functions. Who's going to speak from this? Sponsored by Mayor Rickard.
Yes, I'll be glad to. This is the kind of the long awaited online business license renewal function, moving that over to the Tax Commissioner's Office, which I think is really going to enhance the efficiency and the collections, to be perfectly honest, of business licensing. And this is some of the money that they need for the equipment and build out of space in the Tax Commissioner's Office so that they can take on those responsibilities.
Yes.
Yes, additionally, and the tax commissioner is on to speak to, he has some mandatory equipment he had to buy. So I will let him address that if you would, sir.
Yes, thank you, Dr. Moffitt, and thank you all commissioners for being here and taking the time to do this. Let me apologize. You may see a glare coming off of my screen, but it's due to lighting issues because apparently it's not happening on anybody else's screen. So please forgive that. I'll work with Robbie Riles to get it corrected. Yes, the state went to a new software system, and to cut it very short, they were looking at doing two types of, they're basically pawning off the scanning of titles, documents that we send to them on a weekly basis. They pawn that off back off to us as tax commissioners to save them revenue or to save them labor cost. And they had two options. One was bulk scanning, where I could use my copiers that I have in my office now. And the other part was to purchase individual scanners for each employee. I chose the bulk scanning idea because it would save me money, and I had a plan worked out to where I think it would be more efficient. Come to find out, the state sent out an email, and I forwarded it to administration, where they are not exploring option B, which is the bulk scanning, because they don't have the budget to basically write the software to make that happen. So the only option that they have available is individual scanners, and it's going into effect July 1st. Unfunded mandate. Thank you, state of Georgia.
And those scanners are $19,000. How many?
No, the scanners are $24,000 with a right shy of $6,000 maintenance agreement for 3 years.
And so the bulk of the money is for?
The bulk of what is in the resolution is for the equipment and build out of our office to make way for business license and to come to our office.
Okay. Questions, comments, concerns from the rest of the committee?
What is the final day for business licenses? And is there going to be are there provisions being made for people? I mean, right now you have to take your business license and put it on a box somewhere. So, I mean,
I can't speak to that, what their current operation is. I believe it is a drop-off service. My vision for the future is to enhance our lobby area, as well as to enhance the online capabilities to accept all types of downloads or input from various businesses, to make it much more efficient and honestly much more cost effective from the county's end. I believe this move, salary wise, will be I know there will be a salary decrease for it coming over to our office. And I think that we will be able to increase once we get a handle on business licenses, as far as what we have and what's out there. You'll see a pretty dramatic increase.
so what's the deadline, Dr. Moffitt, what's the deadline for people getting those licenses? Because there's a question floating out there. They don't know whether to go put them in the box.
The deadline was originally April 30th, but Commission approved a amnesty period to June 30th. And so we are allowing people to still submit at this time. And when we say a drop-off box, what we're doing is we are limiting the number of people in the public space at BDS. Right. So when they come into the door, they can leave their application there at the counter, and the receptionist takes it then. And it's our goal to have those licenses processed and mailed back out within 48 hours. And that's been working pretty good.
Okay, do they leave the application and payment, or do they?
Yes, ma'am. They leave the application and payment. Yes, ma'am.
Okay, when will the full transition take place to the tax commissioner?
Is my in trying to work with Wade, we've not set a firm date on that yet. He still has to do the renovations inside his place, and he is proposing in the upcoming budget hiring the deputy commissioner, which will oversee this particular process. So he has to bring that person on board to come in, evaluate, and set up his process.
To add to that, if I may, commissioners, if this is acceptable, I don't want the build out to impact my office, and preliminary conversations, we're going to be able to do that build out on the weekends. And then once it's not going to be any other increased budgetary requirements for this. And then basically we will start that process in July 1st in order to get everybody on board and be ready to have an enhanced and billing cycle to get ready for next year, for January, to be ready to roll. We'll start.
Okay, but amnesty is to what date did you
June
say?
30th. June 30th.
Okay.
So that I am great with not moving anything till July 1st. That's a very good point, Commissioner Lucas.
Who's in charge of the not procurement, but the business license process now?
Her name is Kendra Flowers, and she reports directly to me.
And after this business license season is closed out, you're anticipating switching the function to tax commissioner. And
Correct.
how do I know that the process has improved? What is broken that you're trying to fix?
The efficiencies that come with that, the notifications for the renewal, which is a courtesy that we provide. The tax commissioner already has those things in a pipeline of how he's able to catalog that and implement that into his system of payments. It gives the citizens one place again to go make payments. We just looked at this process over the years prior to me getting here 2 years ago. We talked about that those were some of the things that when they broke it out, that those are some of those unintended consequences that came with that department, and that this gives us a chance we've had the chance to reevaluate it, and we believe that this is probably the most efficient way moving forward as it relates to business license.
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Tillman.
Mr. Chairman.
I see Mayor Rickett, then Commissioner Tillman.
I certainly hope that we can start this process on July the 1st, and so that the tax commissioner can have approximately 90 days before sending out these business license renewal notices and be primed and ready to go for the fall season when they send out the notices and begin to collect the business licenses. And I hope you'll have a December 31st or January 1st kind of timeline to pay.
Commissioner Tillman.
Yes, in the old government, Ed D4 suggested putting somebody downstairs and paying them $25,000 a year to collect this fee. And that was probably 20 years ago. So here we are in 2020, still talking about collecting business license fees, where you got Commissioner Jones that has put forth a resolution and wanted to say to everybody who hadn't paid, just forgive everybody and let's start over fresh. For the last 50 to 100 years, our business license, just like the renewal of licenses, are usually due on January 1, and the grace period is in April. So paying somebody and giving somebody money and setting somebody aside to do this, planning and zoning has two officers. We've got code enforcement officers that go around this entire community. And we got folks in place that could go to all these businesses and check and see and give them a notice to pay their bill. But to add more money to a budget and to set up a whole different system just to collect fees that businesses know that they should be paying, I I just don't understand why we'd be doing that. I mean, we continue to try to find ways to collect money from people that don't do right. These are business people that don't do right. And we should have a system in place online. And you can look at the Atlanta, Georgia model and get their perspective on how do you just renew licenses. So we're gonna spend money, we're gonna put this system in place to try to get people to pay when everybody knows the bill is due January 1 and the grace period is always April 1. So we're giving folks this leeway under Commissioner Jones's bill to forgive everybody who hadn't paid. And now we're gonna put a new system in place and say, now we're gonna start sending out notices in July or by December 1st to say that their bill is due on January 1. We can try it, but it just don't make good sense to me that we keep trying to reward or help folks with bad habits.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Commissioner Rickard. Mayor.
I really think that the biggest single improvement is going to be the ability to pay a business license online. We don't have that capability right now. This is the best way that we can get that capability to, and I'm most grateful for the tax commissioner being willing to undertake it. I think you're going to see your collections go up, and I think the business people in town are going to really appreciate having the flexibility to do it online.
I share Commissioner Tillman's sentiment
online.
I share a lot of Commissioner Tillman's sentiment. I know back in 2008 when you first took office, I believe business license was housed in the finance department. Inspection and fees was its own department. Code enforcement was housed in ECD, and procurement was its own department. Since you've been around, we've merged inspections, business license, and code enforcement into one department. Today, we're in the process of subdividing them back out to almost how it was before. Procurement is moving back to legal. We're splitting procurement, that's new. Business license is moving again. Code enforcement is moving back to ECD, and inspections is now outsourced. In 10 years' time, we've moved stuff around and we still haven't fixed the problem. You consistently move stuff around, but we don't fix it. Now we're talking about constructing a whole new facility or attachment to a facility to collect money that we should be collecting anyway. So I'm not a fan of this item. Questions, comments from the rest of the committee or board?
Mr. Chairman.
Commissioner Jones?
Yes, sir. We're talking about several issues here at the same time. So as far to my friend Commissioner Tillman, Mayor Pro Tem Tillman, the safe haven period was put in place as a temporary situation simply because part of the glitch was on our end, Macon-Bibb County's end, in that some of these people did not get a notice, and yeah, they're business people and they should know to pay their bill. But some of them didn't get the notice. Some of them, the notice did not go out, and some of them were dropped from the list. As County Manager Keith Moffitt has told us, they were inadvertently dropped from the list. That was a mistake on our end. So the measure was put in place to say, okay, we may have screwed up part of the time, and some of you didn't pay it like you were supposed to, so we're going to come up with this safe haven period that Michael McNeil helped me construct. And so it was done with a sense of fairness to reach out to the business people. You didn't get your notice, some of you were dropped from the list, unfairly so. So to make it all up, why don't we encourage everybody, if you're 2 or 3 years behind, let's get that money in and we'll waive the interest and late fees. And so in my mind, it was a good measure and was passed by this board. So again, you're talking about several different issues at the same time.
Commissioner Wynn?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I agree with Commissioner Jones. There's several issues being brought up here, but just yesterday I had a very large commercial business owner friend of mine that's been in business for 40 something years called me and says, why are you not sending out bills anymore? I know I owe it and I pay it every year. He says, but it's just like your tag. You need a little reminder sometimes. He said, and I also would like to see us do it online where we could pay with a credit card or something like that. And here we are with Tax Commissioner McCord. We're going to do that for them. That's what we need to do to make it easier. He said, because ours is so difficult to do. So we want to make it good for our citizens and our businesses to be able to pay their tax bills and have a way to do it that it's simple for them. And I think this is the solution for that. I'm in favor of it.
Further comments, questions, concerns?
Yeah, I don't think the disagreement is about people paying online. I think we need to put that in place.
Yeah.
I think the issue is we're setting up an entire department. We're asking for money. We're asking to fund it, and we've got to designate somebody that we're going to specifically pay for it. And we already have people that go out and do this work through code enforcement that ride this neighborhood, through planning and zoning that ride this neighborhood. And I would just suggesting that, yeah, we could set up all that and help people to pay their bill online, but to be sending out reminders is fine, however we do it, but just paying all the extra costs to do it. Who else is doing that? And there's nothing in place to say it's gonna increase or save us money, because we're not collecting the money. We've already passed, according to Commissioner Jones, a resolution forgiving people for the bad behavior. I don't understand sometimes we want to forgive somebody for paying millions of dollars, but we don't want to give Navicent $50,000 to take care of our citizens. It just don't make sense sometimes how we do things.
And I guess the standing issue for me is it seems like a false dilemma that the online bill pay is only tied to the tax assessor's office. That seems like a service that should not be limited to one department, I guess, online. Commissioner Wynn?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Something's wrong here because we have lost money in our tax collections. Something went wrong in that department, that it wasn't being overseen very well, wasn't being handled very well. I don't know if it's a personnel issue, but we all know that we didn't collect taxes for one reason or another. And I think that department needed to be audited or looked at, but we need to do it. If we can do it this way and it's more efficient and effective, and that's what our customers want, then we need to do it this way.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move to approve. Yeah, I'm going to move to approve.
I have a motion for approval for Commissioner Schlesinger. Do I have a second? Do I have a second? I want to make sure.
Lucas is waving.
Second.
Okay. I have a motion and a second. Further discussion? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I'm gonna have to do a roll call vote, I think.
I mean, Wade had his hand up. I was trying to still chime in.
Oh, I'm sorry.
You got to pay it. Or I was just gonna say, I think whatever we decide to do, I think our tax commissioner, just like Blight, will help us and has always been willing to help us. So it's not a issue of him helping us. We appreciate him, and as we move forward. I'm just saying, let's get some results from this. What's going to be the timeline, Dr. Moffitt? What we going to give it? 90 days, 6 months? We just need to see a result, because we're, come next week, it'll be a resolution asking for some money to pay somebody to specifically do this. And so just what's your timeline on the results?
As it'll be next business cycle as we look at getting this going.
Next April 21.
Yes, I think that would be an excellent target date, Mr. Chairman. Excellent target date. Let's see what we can get done between 9 April with April Fool's Day.
All right. Did you mention that Commissioner McCord, you had a statement?
Yeah, the only part I was going to bring into this is that this is a little different. Bibb County Tax Commissioner's Office, up until consolidation, had always collected the county's business license. It's not foreign to us. You all are about to make a decision that has an impact, and I appreciate that, and I'm glad that you all are there to make that decision. What you would probably, or excuse me, my thoughts is that I know what kind of email and phone calls I get in reference to business license. And I expect you all get phone calls and issues and things of that, emails about business license. Make your determination, you know, because we have done this, been talking about it for a while. I am willing to accept this to try to help out the county. I think our office has some procedures in place, and the process is down to where we could help you all. But it's your decision, and I definitely appreciate the position that you all are in to make this decision. So like I said, I'm here to help you all. I can be of service to you, and I just want to let you know that.
Thank you. Further comments, questions, concerns? If not, Ms. Ross, can you help me out with a roll call vote?
Yes, sir. I'll be happy to.
Appreciate it.
Commissioner Shepherd, how do you vote? Commissioner Shepherd, would you unmute yourself, please? Okay, Commissioner Shepherd, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Schlesinger, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Bibbins, how do you vote? I think Commissioner Bibbins has left us. Commissioner Lucas, how do you vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Watkins, how do you vote?
No.
3-1.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Our next item on the agenda is an ordinance to approve a supplemental appropriation from fund balance in the amount of $743,000 to the solid waste department machinery and equipment line item to provide for the purchase of 2 Kenworth rear loaders and 1 Bush Hog grapple truck to be repaid using funds due from Advanced Disposal Services Macon LLC under the Macon-Bibb contract. And this is sponsored by Mayor Rickard.
Yes, sir.
It is, but I'll let Dr. Moffitt discuss it.
If you recall, when you approved the ADS contract, that part of that contract included a payment from ADS for the $743,000 where they would buy our interest in the carts. I am asking that we go ahead and purchase 3 trucks with that, with those funds. One of them being a grappler truck, which you see here, and the other 2 being rear loader trucks. I will let Ms. Raines talk about the operations of how that'll fit into and how it will make the department more efficient. And this is one thing that we talked about. In order for us to maintain and do our part in this contract, we need new equipment. I believe the last truck we bought was in 2003. So out of the 18 trucks, our vehicle maintenance department is doing a yeoman's work of keeping those trucks operating, but we do need to make investment in our equipment. And so Ms. Raines will tell you about the 3 pieces of equipment and why she would like to go with these 3 first.
Good afternoon. Dr. Moffitt is correct. Our newest rear loaders were purchased in 2003, which is 17 years ago. Almost daily, we have a truck that will break down, and Sam Hughley has been working with us very well in trying to keep them operational. But the purchase of these 2 vehicles will help us out tremendously. That would be 2 less trucks that we would have to worry about, and it would help us to become more efficient on our route collection. The grappler truck, we bought one 5 years ago. This vehicle that we're looking at now, the driver can work it in any conditions because it has a swivel around seat that he never has to step outside of the truck to operate it. And this will help us, like now when we're in the midst of this storm removal, that would be very operational for us. We bought the last one 5 years ago, but it's been used so that it does have a lot of equipment problems, and we're just in the need of a new one for to keep our operational up and going day by day.
So 743 is the amount that ADS paid us.
Correct.
How much do the trucks cost?
I believe it's
643.
643,000.
All three.
For all three.
Okay.
And I believe this was a finance and legal suggestion to go ahead and just make the supplemental in that amount, even though we're not going to spend that full amount, but this just keeps it a whole lot cleaner.
Is training involved? What kind of training is involved? Those are huge pieces of and very expensive pieces of equipment. And I know over the years, we've gone toward training being a part of the package. If we buy something, then there's training from the company. So do we have any of that in place? Because, you know, it takes a lot of money to repair those pieces of equipment.
That's correct. In fact, we've had the company to bring the grappler truck down, and they're willing to come back upon our desire to purchase it and give more training. Right now, we only have 2 employees that operate the grapple truck. So it's not like everyone in the department will be using it, but the company is willing to come down and give more training to those 2 employees that will be using that grapple truck. All of our drivers drive a rear loader, but certainly we could get Kenilworth, the company in whom we're looking to purchase it from, to come and give additional training to us.
I think that's important.
Additionally, commissioners, I just want to make it very clear that this is not general fund money, that these monies are from the solid waste fund, that the ADS contract funds will be put into the solid waste account. So these are funds that are coming out of the solid waste fund.
So Keith, at what point do we receive those funds from ADS?
I believe, and Michael would tell you that I did ask ADS to pay us early, but they said that they had until the contract date, and I believe that's in November, Michael. I thought Michael was still there, but I believe Mike, the attorney,
Sorry, yeah, I'm here. I'm here.
Go ahead.
They're
November.
They have until the end of December to pay us the money.
Okay, end of December. But please know that this will give us time to make the order for the trucks. I believe they're on state contract. We still have to work through the process. So that's why I make the recommendation we go ahead and get started with the purchase now.
Okay. And so the remaining 100K will sit in solid waste fund balance to be used for solid waste purposes.
Correct.
Okay. Further questions, comments from the committee?
Now, I just want to say, Mr. Chair, that that's an impressive grappler, and if Pat can get somebody to run that, it'll be good, because that is an expensive piece of equipment, but it is impressive looking.
Equipment wise, is your department the one that does the street sweepers?
No, that would be parks and beautification.
Okay, all right, for another day.
Good.
Do I have a motion in a second?
I'll move to approve.
I have a motion in a second. Further discussion? There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. Computer died. The next item is an ordinance to amend the Business Development Services Department budget by transferring $295,000 from various salary and benefits line items to the contractual services contract labor item to fund the Safe Built Services contract. If I'm understanding right, these are the salaries of the employees that have been switched over to Safe Built. We're just transferring it to contract services.
Well, this is the salary savings that we did while we were in that hybrid contract with Safe Built. So this is just go ahead and clear that line item up by transferring those salary savings to cover what the contractual cost for Safe Built was. And those, to break it down even further than that, the first contract was through February, $164,106, and then from finance telling me that anticipated the from March through June when you approved the new contract was $130,000.
So what's happening now? So the salary savings came from
the savings that we had over the last year with the vacant positions when we took on Safe Built with the director position and the plans review position and the inspections they were doing. So we knew we had the salary savings to cover the contract.
All right, so this is from the plans examiner and the director's position, and it covers
correct
the Safe Built 290.
Yes, sir.
So it ended up being a wash for you.
I anticipate when it's all said and done a savings, but I have to get finance to true those numbers up.
So right now the expense for Safe Built is $294.
$295, yes, sir.
$295. Okay. And this moves just about $290. Okay.
So it's just a line transfer from salary savings to contractual services.
All right.
Mr. Chair, I'll move to approve.
Have a motion. I'll second. Further discussion. There being none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Item D is an ordinance to amend the solid waste budget by transferring $95,000 from the landfill operations supply line to the machinery and equipment line to fund the purchase of a skid steer for the landfill. Have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have a second?
What is that?
Yes.
What is that?
About 2 weeks ago, Solid Waste Director Ms. Raines notified me of the need to replace a piece of equipment at the landfill.
Okay, the skid steer is an enclosed piece of equipment that we use to mow the grass. As you know, we have well over 100 acres and over 50% of that has grass that we have to mow. Right now, what we've been using, we do currently have one enclosed skid steer, and the other piece of equipment that we've used is an open John Deere tractor that is really made to mow level surfaces. And as you know, we do have slopes at the landfill, and this piece of equipment is really unsafe when it comes to mowing on a slope. And if we purchased this piece of equipment last year, we had an incident where when using that John Deere tractor, the guy that was mowing came in contact with some toxin because we're cutting grass over buried garbage and we don't know what we may come across. He ended up at the ER and subsequently had to have 2 days off. And we never found out what toxin it was. So we really need to use something enclosed for the safety of our employees. It will be more efficient in cutting and mowing the grass. So this is something that's very well needed now, as well as after we close the landfill, we will continually have to mow for 30 years. So this piece of equipment will come in handy and will be used for an extended period of time.
Talk about risk management.
Further comments, questions, concerns? We already have a motion and a second. If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? This motion carries. And that concludes the operations and finance agenda unless the administration has something else.
Thank you very much.
Yield back to you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you very much, Chairman Watkins. That concludes the committee meetings for today. So unless there are points of personal privilege or anybody else has anything for the good of the order?
Yeah.
Who was that?
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm on Jersey Mike.
Elman.
Yeah, I don't think that was intended for us. So can I get a motion? Can I get a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
And without objection, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody.
Bye, y'all.
Thanks.